All right, people of Twitch, how's it going? Fenaria, thank you for being first. I appreciate you. Let's see, Zenith, I know the first competition, it's always you and fun, but you try your best, you know. You died on your shaman. No, Zenith. It's okay. You have like a million characters. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be right back up. Anyone else who's out there? Hello, I'm Abbers. I play some video games on Twitch sometimes. I also interview other streamers on a little podcast we called Why We Go Live, and that's what we're doing today. I'm gonna introduce you to my friend and yours, Pastor Dave Plays. Here is a clip to introduce him.
The storm isn't too bad out here. Hopefully the storm's not too bad.
Well, I should be able to find my way in the fog. The only real danger is the fact that I won't hear the bear ahead of time. I hope you stayed up for that, Jackie. No. Hey, Vale! I'm trying not to die, so don't distract me. Whew. Okay, I should be alright now, but I am low on mana. And he keeps disarming me, the dirty, rotten scoundrel. And cursing me with the Eye of Pallas, whatever that is. None of us really knows what it is.
There we go. Yeah, I did not know those guys were there. This is bad. We are probably dead because we're trying to swim across way too much water here. Oh no. We're dead. No, we're not. No, we are not. Woo-hoo. Woo. I love this game.
See you again on Tuesday, maybe, buddy. You don't need that.
Why?
No, not right now.
Maybe.
I said I'll be right there. You want to say goodnight? They can't see you. Say bye.
Bye.
There you go. All right. Yeah, have a great night, everybody. Enjoy your evening. And I look forward to seeing you after the weekend. Thanks for that. Yes, that's the sign for smart. Who's smart? Me or you? Me? Dad's smart? Aw, that's nice of you to say. Ah, thank you for that. Whatever it was. All right. Yes. Take care. Bless you guys. Have a great night. And see you again.
Pastor Dave, welcome. So nice to see you. I'm so excited to talk to you. That gnome clip, I like, my heart was racing even though I've seen it before. I can't believe you survived that.
Not my closest call.
Really?
Probably my third closest call.
Oh,
yeah.
man. Especially escaping in the water. I was like, there's no way. He's done.
I
There's
know.
no way.
I know.
Oh, man. Well, should we just get into it here?
Yes, please.
So when was your very first stream?
I actually had to go look it up because it's been a little while, but not.
Yeah.
I guess it's all relative. But my very first stream was back in May 2021.
Okay.
Which seems like forever ago.
Yeah, it does.
And I had wanted to or thought about streaming for years before that. But hardware limitations, internet limitations, it just couldn't really start much before it did, I guess. But yeah, couple of started like not a whole lot of streams at first, just a couple to kind of get things figured out and no webcam and the mic from this thing here rather than something with a little bit of quality. But
Please don't judge me for using this mic right now.
no, it sounds great. And I was surprised at like when I listened back, I was surprised at the quality I was getting out of like a headset mic, but didn't have the control that I kind of wanted. So eventually I upgraded, but yeah.
So talking about like having wanted to like years before then, like what, can you go back to when you kind of first were inspired by the idea of streaming?
I mean, how far back do you want me to go?
Well, when did you, I guess, very first like think like, oh, this is something that maybe I could do or I'd want to do?
Right. So throwback way back to 2010, when StarCraft Wings of Liberty was coming up.
Okay.
I had gotten interested in that. I mean, I had enjoyed the first game, and ended up finding some YouTube content about StarCraft 2, and then ended up coming across a couple of guys at Life's a Glitch TV, is their YouTube channel. Nova War and Maximus Black are the internet names that they use, and they were just not just casting any old StarCraft games, but like casting cheese games, casting like goofy stuff, and it just, I don't know, struck my sense of humor funny. And they were very early adopters of Twitch.
Okay.
So my Twitch account I made, I think, in 2012.
Wow.
Yeah, like one of the two guys from Life's a Glitch TV there, one of them has a handful of subscribers that have over 100 month subscribers.
That's incredible.
Nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, watching them and seeing how much fun they had, and like very good chemistry between the two of them. They'd been friends for years before. And so just watching them, I always thought it would be cool. Like, but again, I was like, back in those days, I was a pastor. I had really little kids. And so, it was great to be able to catch some stuff from time to time or watch YouTube videos, but I didn't have, a couple hours to kind of sit down.
Sure.
It wasn't work related. Right. So, so it was always sort of that would be fun, but I don't know. I don't think I can make it work with my life and my schedule and all that. And, so eventually some of that stuff changed. I mean, your kids get older, that's unavoidable. And, now we have one who's graduated high school, one who's graduating this year, and one who's supposed to be graduating next year too. So,
okay. Yeah. So a little bit more free time, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure what happened here, but your camera has frozen on my screen.
Oh, really? It's funny because on OBS it's still okay, but thank you for letting me know. You could maybe refresh your page if you want to.
As long as that doesn't kill our connection, I
don't think so. I think it should be fine. Yeah, go for it. We'll find out. Watch it just break the entire stream.
I didn't even. It just gave, like, as soon as I hit the button, I got the pop-up window saying changes may not be saved, and then you're back.
Yay! So. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Well, part of why I love to shout out Video Ninja, it takes all of the like struggle where you and I are seeing it, but through OBS, it's like clear. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but like if you see it buffering for our conversation, more than likely on OBS it's okay. So like,
right.
I don't know how the magical technology works, but it's something that's like, it feels like much more reliable than Discord.
Well, that's good. And yours is frozen again, but I'm not super stressed.
I was gonna say, anyway, as long as you can hear me, yeah.
Yes, I can, and I can just keep refreshing it if I need. But
perfect,
yeah. I actually found Video Ninja back in November.
Okay.
I did a Christmas celebration kind of stream in December, and I was looking for a way to get my camera from my phone to the computer here.
Yeah.
And you can set it up that way, and it actually uses the Wi-Fi router in the house.
Okay.
Because that's my big struggle being in rural Canada, is that I have very poor internet.
Yeah.
And so being able to keep, like, instead of having to upload that, bring it back into the stream from my phone, being able to keep it on the Wi-Fi made it a lot easier to do stuff in the kitchen and like look at the like Lego project I did and all that stuff. So
nice. Well, and I'm sorry, you probably mentioned, but so your first stream in 2021, what activity, what game were you streaming? I
was streaming World of Warcraft.
Okay.
It's been I shouldn't say unfortunate addiction, but it's been an on and off addiction.
I think anyone that plays an MMO fully understands
Well,
that
fair enough.
statement.
Yeah. I don't even remember I'm not even sure what expansion would have been live during that. That was pre-classic, right?
2021?
Oh, no.
No, that would have been, classic era. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, because that was one of the things that I had kind of given me a little kick in the butt to start looking at stuff and seeing if I could actually stream, was the whole hardcore thing, right, with needing to preserve your footage and all that.
Right, yeah.
And so I'm not sure if I would have been, so hard to tell. And I don't have many VODs from back then, or, saved stuff. But
Yeah.
Moved from that, right. And that was the other thing that I wanted to stream, because I had this old, incredibly decrepit, ancient computer. It was like 8 years old. And finally, so about all I could play on it was World of Warcraft, because they do a really good job of making it run on older machines. But I've been watching lots of people on Twitch and watching them play all these cool games that I really wanted to play. And so finally, we had to, organize financially so I could upgrade to something which is what I'm still using now, three years later.
Wow.
And is still great. Like, it's not bad at all, but it's not cutting edge anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, so I had played through the first Subnautica. It was the first game I played on my brand new computer.
Okay.
I don't know if you've played Subnautica, but
I have not. I've watched you play it a little bit, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a ride and a half. Especially the first game. The follow-up was good in different ways. But whatever, sequels, right? So
yeah,
a lot of the same stuff, just a little bit different, and so I enjoyed the story of the second one. But that was the other thing. I had enjoyed the first one so much, I wanted to actually stream and record playing the second one, and to some extent, I feel like that was kind of more where things picked up for me streaming. Like, before that, it was 2-3 people at the most.
Yeah.
Like peak viewership, not like average viewers or anything like that.
Right. Yeah.
And through some, like, it wasn't a brand new game when I played it necessarily, but it brought in the first folks who enjoyed the experience of Pastor Dave Plays and came back when I switched over to playing some more World of Warcraft and some other things. So
yeah, I think that's so interesting on Twitch. The kind of two groups of people where it's like they're interested because of the game that you're playing, and also they enjoy you, right? Versus the people that really enjoy you, and it doesn't really matter what game you're playing. So it's interesting because both are great and both, I think, add value, at least for me as a streamer. But it is really interesting because you can tell pretty easily who is there for what. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and who shows up when you're playing what games,
yeah,
or who is there kind of regardless.
Yeah.
And it's actually, I don't know, I find it kind of humbling when I find that there are people who tend to show up almost every stream.
Yeah.
And I mean, to some extent, it's a time slot thing, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Folks that might otherwise, because I don't know how anyone else's experience is, but I have 3 and 4 times the views on my VODs than I do on my live streams.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know what that is, what the reason for that is, but I, again, not complaining. It's just seems a little bit odd to me.
Yeah.
I personally rarely go back and watch like full length VODs of other people's streams.
Yeah. I very rarely do. Well, to me, that's one of the biggest differences between Twitch as a platform and YouTube as a platform, right? Because for me, if I'm going to do that, YouTube just makes more sense. That's what the medium was kind of created for. And Twitch, for me, the appeal of watching other streamers is being able to interact with them in real time,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and for you, you're someone that I found you through Baba Share Show, actually, who's one of the OG devs of World of Warcraft. And you had made, man. I know, me too. If he comes back, I want to interview him for sure.
For sure. He's doing good things, though.
Yeah, it sounds like it. But you had edited a video, kind of talking about Blizzard and Bobby Kotick, and I was
yes.
originally I kind of got the impression that you were someone who was into editing. Like, do you agree with that? What is your relationship to editing versus streaming?
Well, yeah, I mean, before streaming, I like not having the setup and the hardware available to do it. But so I mean, when we were chatting before, I had mentioned before what I do now, which is working in disability support. Before that, I spent 15 years as a pastor. So I don't currently pastor a church, for anybody who doesn't know, but I did spend 15 years leading involved with 3 different churches in a staff capacity. And the last church we were at, I say we collectively as our family, but that I worked for, was already live streaming, or in the mid 2010s, I guess. So I came in later than that, but we always had a variety of things on the go, whether it was kind of doing video announcements or doing video promos for things during our services. It was very audio visual focused. And so when I came on staff, I actually ended up doing a lot of that video editing and found that I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And so having done the church stuff and then Baba's content, and it was actually Kevin Jordan who suggested the content for the Bobby Ball video there.
Okay.
That's actually Bobby Kotick in that video. He has an uncredited role in the movie as the CEO.
God, that's funny. The irony there is wild to me. Yeah.
And so Kevin had pointed it out, I think in one of his streams one day, and said somebody should do a video about that. And I thought, challenge accepted.
Okay, got it. Okay, that makes sense because Kevin Jordan and Baba are kind of this like dynamic duo in my mind.
Yes.
You know. Okay, yeah, that's great. Well, it's interesting too to me. You know, a little bit backwards, but like the skills I've gained in terms of video editing, I don't think I would have ever done prior to Twitch, and so it's cool kind of having this opposite experience of having edited for your church, and now I imagine that lends itself really well to your streaming experience and being on YouTube and whatnot.
It has some advantages for sure. The big problem is that editing is time consuming.
Yeah, definitely.
Which you well know.
Yeah.
Anybody who's done it knows it. And so it's always a tension for me, right? Because again, I carve out this time slot to stream on the days when I'm not working.
Yeah.
Most of the days when I'm not working, which means then I only have mornings for family stuff, for painting our basement, which we're currently in the middle of, you know, all these other things. And some days when the kids are at school, it's not, you know, there's lots of things to get done. But between editing, like my VODs, so I can not lose a bunch of the footage, and occasionally trying to put some clips together to share on social media or whatever, and then just video editing tends to slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
As the thing that is lowest on my priority list, even though I enjoy it. And you know, Twitch has those tools for making shorts and whatever that are nice to have now. Take some of the complication out of it, but don't give you as much freedom as kind of doing it all yourself.
Totally. Yeah. It streamlines it to a certain extent, but like you said, it's not the same as actually going in and like, you know, really like fine tuning everything the way that you'd like to.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, you know, there's only so many hours. And,
totally. Yeah. Well, and yeah, like you said, having a full-time job, having a family, like, you know, there's all of these different things that you do have to figure out where you're going to prioritize your time and how you're going to use that time. I think for me, often streaming just feels easier than editing. But I know other people that feel differently about that. I guess it just kind of depends on your relationship to both of those things, you know?
Yeah, I would agree. Streaming is easier, but it's also, I don't know, it's also more intuitive.
Yeah.
You know, like I was going to say, I don't normally spend too much time fiddling with stuff. A couple of weeks ago, I started having some audio issues, and I'm really still not sure what's going on. Where my, like, any background music or even game audio doesn't come through to the stream properly unless I'm talking. So
that is so weird.
I know.
Yeah.
At first I thought it was like a noise gate issue, or that something was wonky with the like the noise cancellation, but it's just I don't know what it is.
Interesting.
So I'm on the verge of switching streaming software, just because everything's coming into the mixer fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I listen to what's getting sent out to Twitch, everything sounds fine to me.
Yeah.
So it's somewhere between the software and when it actually arrives on the internet that it's goofy.
That is so strange.
Yeah, which has gotten a little distracting, I know, for some people.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny because whenever there's something loud in the game, like the Ashenvale music, it kind of swells to this crescendo, and that comes through.
Yeah.
But then when it gets down to the quiet background stuff, which you would normally hear, it just cuts it right out.
Huh.
But it doesn't matter even if I turn the noise gate off completely, I'm still having the same issues.
Interesting.
So now that we've bored everybody that doesn't care about, audio
I'm fascinated. It is funny though, the way that like when I do have technical issues like that, if I can't figure it out, there is this kind of just like impulse I have to be like, well, burn it all down, start from scratch. Like, I don't know what else to do. You know what I mean? Which is hard because there's so many. Audio is just like one aspect of everything that you set up, right?
Setting up all the scenes again with the background stuff and the camera where you want it, and it's like video editing. It's just time consuming.
Yeah.
Except I don't find it fun.
Interesting.
I find the video editing kind of fun because, well, I guess with the stream you end up seeing the results in the end anyway. But you appreciate it after the fact. But I enjoy the editing kind of because I can go through and I can watch the like 10 seconds and see did that work. If I need to move the pieces of the video or some of the graphics around, you can do that and see kind of in real time how it's improving things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas when you do that when you're live streaming, a lot of people tend to check out.
It's true. Well,
and I can't blame them.
I think too, something very gratifying about editing is like making a joke land, or like having, you know what I mean? Like having that like aha moment of it clicking and being like, that's exactly what I wanted. Like the timing of it is kind of cool. So even though like, it's, I would agree. I don't think it's as intuitive and like, it's certainly more time consuming in a lot of respects, but there is something like once you finish a video, there's something that feels really good about it, You
can publish it, you can upload it, and then 3 or 4 people can watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, I got 5 views today. Yes,
exactly.
Going viral, Dave.
I haven't checked in so long what, and I'm sure it probably hasn't changed since the last time I looked at that Bobby Ball video.
Yeah.
Because it was the most watched until a couple of shorts I had from the Long Dark really kicked off. It was my most viewed internet content by far, which was nice to see because it was a really great idea and a fun project, and it almost popped into my head fully formed. And the script practically wrote itself because I did the text to speech voiceover thing.
Right.
And it worked so well.
Yeah, I think often, especially in the kind of digital age that we're living in, something that is like short and effective like that is just like going to be the most, impactful in so many ways. I was going to say, if you guys aren't following Pastor Dave on YouTube, there's his link, so go follow him. But yeah, it's a funny one. Yeah, for sure. I think too, as far as like art forms are concerned, to me, having enjoyed painting and drawing and these kind of other mediums, there's something about video editing that when you have something fully formed, you really can make that happen. Whereas with other mediums, sometimes not so much, Are you interested in other kind of creative pursuits? I
have trouble drawing stick people.
Okay.
I've never been an artist in that sense. I have some background with music, like I was in band class in high school and used to play the bass guitar and like in a worship band and that kind of thing. So I have some creativity locked away in there somewhere. But it doesn't come out through my fingers unless there's a keyboard or a mouse or something attached.
Gotcha. Okay.
Our oldest son is actually, it's a little bit worrisome as a parent. Just he's very talented, very artistic. Why I say it worries me is because he's doing like computer animated graphics courses, like as in to work on games, and I just know that market is so not just saturated but volatile, right? So it's but he loves it. He's good at it. He starts in a couple weeks here, his second session of education and training on it. So
Yeah. Well, good luck to him. I hope it goes well. As someone who went to school for music performance and does not use, well, I didn't actually get my degree. I dropped out. But as someone who lived as a musician in my, early 20s, I can say that I don't regret it at all. And I can also say that I've been able to like find my own path and, figure out how to pay my rent. And I think that, it is a scary, decision to go with your art and your passion. But I do think that it's worthwhile, whether or not it becomes the thing that you do for the rest of your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he's learning technical stuff, and he's learning how to meet deadlines, and he's learning how to, manage his time, right?
Yeah.
Between some work stuff, the school stuff, and real life. Like he runs the PowerPoint presentation stuff basically for our church most Sundays.
Okay.
So it's not a huge time investment for him, but it is something that he's found that he enjoys, to be a part of what's going on, even though he's a shy person.
Yeah.
And which is fine.
Yeah.
And honestly, before I started training for being a pastor, I was terrified of public speaking.
Interesting.
Absolutely petrified and terrified. But you don't have a whole lot of choice.
Yeah.
And that is really what I felt called and passionate about doing. And don't, again, like you say, don't regret it for a second, having done it. It would take a very interesting turn of events for us to go, for me necessarily to go back to it at this point in time. But
yeah.
I don't think it's off the table. It's just not necessarily the most important thing anymore.
Yeah.
And I love what I do now as well. So, not that there aren't days that are frustrating and days you want to pull your hair out, and
of course,
and days that get overwhelming.
Yeah.
But it's both jobs have that. So
yeah.
But both there was more good than bad. So.
Well, and so obviously your faith is really important to you, and you wear it very much on your sleeve, like with your screen name, right? And so I'm curious for you, how your experience on Twitch is having a screen name that says, Pastor Dave.
Mostly I get people who want to know if I really am a pastor.
Okay. Yeah.
So of course I have a chat command for that, which basically just says, yes, I spent 15 years in pastoral ministry, although I'm not, employed at a church anymore right now. That's still a huge part of my identity. And I don't go around broadcasting it to everybody I meet in real life, but when it's your name on the internet, it is kind of unavoidable.
Yeah.
I have met with almost no negative takes on it.
Yeah.
So, there's probably people that come in, hear me talk about it, and then leave and don't say anything, which is fine by me. Hi, buddy. You wanted to come say hi? Yeah? Why are you squeezing my hand? I love you. You have school tomorrow, but you're still kind of sick. He's got a cold. Do you want to sit on my knee for a second? Say hi. This is my middle boy, who's graduating in at the end of this school year. That's right. We just did grad pictures. You smiled really good. So yes, you will, because you have some background in religious, like Christian tradition, right?
Yeah. I was raised in the church. Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about VeggieTales in passing before.
Yes, we have.
Yes.
My brother has VeggieTales emotes. Hold on, let me see if I can find them.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. But yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say our son here, our middle son, he loves VeggieTales.
Okay.
Don't you? Who's your favorite? What are you gonna wear for grad? Yeah, he's got a purple suit with a yellow vest, and he's actually got a Larry Boy hat.
Okay, nice.
So he's gonna be Larry Boy for graduation.
Love it. That's amazing.
Yeah, in June. So,
well, congratulations. That's huge.
Yeah. I know you're gonna see your friends, right? Are they gonna come too? I know. He's supposed to be. He does like a. So he's in grade 12, but is obviously not doing chemistry and biology and and English. I should have mentioned this guy has a condition called cerebral palsy, which is kind of a blanket diagnosis that basically means unspecified brain damage. So some people with cerebral palsy are in wheelchairs, not our guy, but he has a global developmental delay and also some minor physical difficulties with walking and that. But he's pretty mobile. He's got good at getting himself into trouble sometimes, aren't you? And loves watching himself on the camera, which is why he crashes most of my streams.
I was gonna say he makes appearances. Yeah. Well, and there's a great clip of him in your the channel trailer, the clip that we showed at the beginning here.
Yes, and I included that on purpose, just because it's pretty common on our stream, and that was one of the ones where he's sort of been most engaged with what's going on and talking to me. I'm holding his hand right now. He has a habit of reaching over and muting my microphone.
Fun, love it. Yeah.
Yeah. See, now Hey, what are you doing? Oh, yeah. You want that? No, it's for me. Okay, maybe later. He's very affectionate, even when he's a little stuffed up. But yeah, so he. What was I saying?
Prior to that, we were talking about the church and those kinds of things. But I think this leads into a great question in terms of like your family and your son making appearances on your screen and on your stream and having been a pastor and everything. Like how do your different kind of aspects of identity, I guess, show up on your stream for you?
Oh wow, I don't know. I've said, I don't really have too much that I won't talk about. So I'm more than happy to. I actually have a channel points redemption that's for Bible trivia.
Okay, all right.
Which has led to some interesting conversations. It doesn't get used as much as I thought it would, but whatever. I mean, again, but so there's been some questions that are downright comedic, right? That people are just asking to be goofy or because they came across something in the Bible that they thought was odd. But there's been a few really interesting conversations about what does this actually mean, Dave? Like, I don't know anybody else I can ask in real life that would be able to answer these questions for me. So help me out. And that's been fun. And I make it a point when we get into those conversations to say that, anybody and everybody is welcome in my channel, whether you are, and I have people show up sometimes that are like, praise God, and being all religiously verbose about faith and, praise God that there's somebody on the internet on Twitch who's, bringing that perspective. And I don't go out of my way to preach or anything. But one of my goals, I guess, for streaming is to just present the fact that pastors are people too.
Yeah.
Like game devs are people too, streamers are people too, which is one of the reasons I love the podcast that you do, because it like you see the big streamers and with tens of thousands of people watching them or whatever, and you think like it's like watching somebody in a movie, right? Like, how can that be a real person as well as up on that big giant screen with all these people chanting their names or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I mean, all these things, and like I end up having to go and help my boys sometimes when they get home from school. It's a little bit different now that our oldest is graduated, because he's like, all three of them used to walk to school and back.
Okay.
Now it's a little bit different, just with the schedule. But every time they would come home, I'd usually take a break for 5 minutes and kind of welcome everybody in the door and make sure our middle son was kind of settled and had something that was going to occupy his time. And his brothers are pretty good about kind of keeping an eye on him when it's stream time, but they also know, there's no reason they can't knock on the door or come in if there's an actual problem.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I think you touched on something there. I think one of my motivations and one of the great joys of doing this podcast is kind of recognizing that we're all multidimensional human beings. And so, I think that a lot of that shows up on people's streams and a lot of that doesn't, depending on the person, so it's always fascinating to me to kind of get a little bit of a peek behind the curtain and find out more, because like you said, we're all we're all human beings with lives outside of Twitch. And so to kind of see where all of that meets up to me is really interesting.
Yeah. And I think a lot that gets lost is that and like everybody has I think at least everybody has a streaming persona.
Sure.
Whether they intend to or not. It's the same thing with, I get, so we're not pastoring right now. But we obviously still, I shouldn't say obviously, but we do still attend a local church in our town. And so along with some other things, we have like a rotation of people who like read scripture on a Sunday morning. And so I've had a few people say over the years, not just in this church, but that they really appreciate my scripture reading voice, whatever that is, right? I guess I do. I don't think about it. I just, when I'm reading, I read.
Yeah.
But that comes across different than conversationally.
Sure.
And I mean, the clips you see on the stream, like from the intro there, are very much my more animated moments.
Sure.
And I'm generally much more of a laid back, quiet person. I don't, I'm not the life of the party in any party that's going on, but more than happy to, to chat and hang out with people that are there. So
yeah, well, and there's something cool about this is a space where you get to be the life of the party if you want to. You know what I mean?
My party.
Yeah, it's your party.
Right.
Yeah, but no, I love this idea of personas, and I think that like when we say persona, sometimes there's this implication that it's a false self, right? And I don't think that's necessarily true. Like, work me is still me, even though it's very different than at home me. They're just different aspects of who I am and how I present, Yeah.
And I've always had I think this came up earlier too in our sort of pre-chat, just about internal monologue, right?
Yeah.
And I do have that, and like it's always on. And I will admit that even the last couple of days leading up to our chat today, I had things wandering through my mind, but what can I say about this, or what would I want to express if that topic comes up, and just wandering down those rabbit trails, and that's a double-edged sword, right? Because if I'm stressed, then all the negative things go through, and what am I going to happen if my car breaks down on the way to work, or what am I going to, right? So you can spiral negatively on those things.
Yeah.
But that was much more of I'm excited to talk, to get to share my opinions, and because it is, I do feel sometimes like a more religiously minded aspect, I shouldn't say isn't welcome on the internet. It isn't very common to find a well-reasoned, calm discussion of religious matters, right?
Yeah.
Because it is very charged and it is very personal to people.
Sure.
And there are some issues that are very divisive, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
And so there is a little bit of a minefield there. And I don't feel like I've shied away from it necessarily.
Yeah.
But I also don't get a lot of direct questions either. I feel like most people that come through my channel, with the word pastor in the title, they have some preconceptions, but I think to some extent that kind of maybe self-filters too. The people that don't want to risk being exposed to the negative sides of that, or what they perceive to be the negative sides of that, just don't show up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And thankfully I haven't really had, I mean, other than, bots, I don't think I've had to ban anybody for being, offensive in any kind of a way at all, really.
Yeah.
And maybe that's my, white male privilege showing through, who's to say, but there is that sort of, like I say, that self-filtered aspect to things.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that, using the word pastor, it definitely, I don't want to say necessarily puts a target on your back, but it does tell people an aspect of who you are that, like you said, can be very polarizing and divisive. And I think for me, as someone who was raised mostly Christian, a little bit Messianic Jew, and have come into my own with my queerness and having recognized some of the harm that religion has done to me as a queer person, as a woman, I am wary of someone who would have the word pastor in their name because you
And
just don't
understandably
know,
so.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, too, part of why I was so excited to talk to you is that you have been someone for me that is a really great example of living your values without being judgmental of other people and without pushing them on other people. And I think that, like, I think I was surprised when you first started hanging out in my stream because I am such a like out loud queer person and very like will be open about religious harm and all of these things. And so the fact that like you're open to that speaks volumes to me about the kind of content of your character, you know?
Well, that's quite a compliment, and I'm humbled, but and appreciate it. Uh, and it's good to hear that too, because that is what I have wanted to convey.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, there's so many so many different things to, you know, attach to that. And you're right, there is I mean, there's a reason that, well, there's multiple reasons, right? Why people have stopped or withdrawn from attending in lots of religious, and it's not just Christianity, although that's the, you know, prevalent North American you know, measuring post that, you know, historically.
Mm.
But I mean, like my parents grew up in the church, and when they got married, basically just gave up going.
Yeah.
Like my grandfather on my dad's side was a minister,
Mm-hmm.
and both of my parents, not that they necessarily entirely abandoned the beliefs or the morals or anything like that of Christianity, but they definitely didn't see that their own attending was an overall positive for them.
Mm.
And it's hard to say why. Like I know they walked through some challenging things individually. And my mother, I didn't learn until a couple of years before she left us, before she died, that she had struggled with anxiety her entire life.
Mm.
Looking back on it, it's obvious,
Yeah, sure.
right? But just, yeah, whatever. As a kid, you don't think about it. As a teenager, you know, when I was a teenager in the 90s, it still wasn't really even talked about. And then when I was 20, almost 23, we moved. I grew up on the West Coast, outside Vancouver, and now we live in the prairies. And we've been here for, good grief, since 2003.
Oh, long time.
Yeah. So I've actually spent more time almost on the prairies now than I did on the West Coast.
Okay.
But yeah, so I know they went through some things that didn't mesh well with the faith experience that they were kind of exposed to, and which is, I shouldn't say ironic, but it's kind of funny the way those things happen. Like I got connected with a very, very different sort of side of the Christian spectrum than they were a part of growing up, and so I don't know. There's so many things to say and unpack from that. I'm not sure where to go next, but
Yeah.
it is. I think it is important to see church people as people, and realize that, well, first of all, that we are as messed up as, you know, everybody else.
Great point.
Maybe in different ways, right?
Sure.
But I know he's excited because he's supposed to be making sushi at school tomorrow.
Oh.
He and I are the only two in our family. We love sushi.
But being sick, there's this fear of missing that, I imagine.
Yes,
yeah.
But it's only you and Jayla doing cooking, Micah. If you're sick, you're not going to miss sushi. They'll do sushi when you get back. Okay? Yeah. You're just having fun watching yourself on camera.
Are any of your kids interested in streaming? Have any of them like expressed an interest in it?
No. Our oldest does do some online content. He started a YouTube channel even before I did.
Yeah.
He was 13, I think, when he uploaded his first couple of videos. it's taken a back seat while he's been doing education,
Okay.
like his art education stuff. But I don't know. Every now and again, at 11, he's the night owl. I mean, so am I to some extent. But
Yeah.
Because I get up so early for work, I have to force myself to go to bed. But even on the weekends or when I'm not working the next day, sometimes I'll go to bed at like 11 o'clock, and his bedroom is right underneath ours. So then I'll start hearing him talking or narrating something, or he's always got a story that he's writing or something creative that
Nice.
he said before that if he doesn't write it down, it just swims around in his head and doesn't let him get any rest.
Totally.
So,
Yeah, I can identify with that. What about gaming? Is gaming something that you all do together at all?
not together anymore. But yeah, so for this art program he's taking, we had to get him he had to get a quite a high-end computer to run the graphics processing software and whatever. So before that, he was just using a little old laptop for YouTube and even for uploading stuff. And so now he's finally able to actually play some real games.
Nice.
So he does do some of that. Our interests are kind of different.
Mm-hmm.
But all three of our boys, we started with Mario Kart.
Love it.
When they were little. I
Classic.
had Mario Kart Double Dash for the GameCube.
Yes, that's the best one, honestly.
It is because you can have two different people play the same race.
The strategy's a little bit more nuanced, right? It's fun.
Yeah. So we started out playing together, and they would be in charge of like firing the turtle shells.
Okay.
So I'd say, okay, fire it now, and then I would be like, okay, you figure out when to do it, and then if we both press this button at the same time, you can drive for a minute.
Mm-hmm,
And then if you have trouble or if you want me to take over, we can switch back. And so yeah, that was a fun journey for all of them. And then they went through and beat all my best times.
That's what, it's a rite of passage. It's the passing of the torch.
Yeah.
Well, and where did your love of video games come from? When did that start for you?
Probably in what year would that have been? 86 or 87 when my parents brought home an NES for Christmas.
Nice.
Yes, that was possibly their greatest mistake as parents.
Amazing.
No, I still have it downstairs, believe it or not.
Nice.
Yes, I played an awful lot of Mario and Duck Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And then rented games for years growing up, and had a Super Nintendo, and then got busy with school and didn't do quite as much. But I always have enjoyed story-rich games.
Yeah.
The early Final Fantasy games just sucked me right in, even though they weren't anything compared to modern standards. They were revolutionary for me at the time.
Totally.
I was reading like choose your own adventure novels, and I I had one that had like 50 different bookmarks in it because I wanted to understand the branching paths to the story.
Yes.
and wanted to be able to go back and retrace my steps rather than just start from the very beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
Love that. Oh man, choose your own adventure novels are so good. Like I want to be like, I hope they make a comeback. I don't know if they ever went away, but I associate it with my childhood more than I do, now,
The Scholastic Book Fair.
Yes, exactly. Yes, definitely. With streaming and kind of your love of streaming starting way before you actually started streaming, what are some of the biggest differences you see in you as a streamer now versus when you very first started?
Well, the thing nobody tells you when you decide to start streaming is how much less time you can spend watching streams.
True. That's a good point. Yeah.
So now I try and stop by somebody's stream for a few minutes before I start my own, and try to end with again hopping into somebody else's stream and visiting them. Doesn't always work with family and time and everything, but
sure.
I mean, when I started, I didn't have a camera. I had not as nice a microphone, but I did notice a change when I got the webcam.
Yeah.
Just not so much my average viewership, but the number of people that actually stopped through. You get the Twitch summary at the end of a stream, and before I would have like, maybe 5 or 6 peak viewers, and there'd be a dozen people that would have come through the whole stream. Now it's 5 or 6 people, but there's 20 or 30 that have come through sometimes in the course of a stream. And I always knew that having the face cam impacted things, but I never realized, and I'm sure it's different for everybody too, right? But just that slightly more connection, I think, that it's easy to feel to somebody on the screen. And I don't know. I mean, I've watched and enjoyed plenty of streams with no camera, and I know not everybody wants to be on camera all the time. Like even yourself, you don't always have the camera on. You've got what's the term for it?
I have a little PNG tuber, is what it is.
That's the one. Yes, I can never.
Which is still
remember.
relatively new. I think most of my time streaming when I first started was no camera. So yeah.
Well, yeah, and because you were doing the hardcore kind of saving your footage thing.
Yeah.
Which I think got an awful lot of people into streaming. It was part of the equation for me, but I was never. I guess I never really did hardcore until the add-on was out, which would kind of allowed you to sidestep the streaming.
Yeah.
And because my streaming window for an MMO feels relatively short, there's just only so much you can there's only so much progress you can make if you're not doing something off stream. Even if it's just, trade skills and whatever else. It's just, it's hard content to stream because it's hard to be engaging while you're sitting at the auction not that auction during hardcore, but even today, like in Season of Discovery, I'm having almost as much fun doing alchemy and selling stuff on the auction house as I am leveling up my paladin.
Sure. Well, it's funny that you say that because I know other people feel similarly. I think because I started I started streaming purely because of saving the footage. And so it's kind of still mind-blowing to me that it's become so much more than that for me. But I feel wrong like playing hardcore if I'm not streaming it. There's this accountability thing that I'm kind of caught up with. And I think for me, fishing streams, chore streams, I almost enjoy those more and feel like I can be more engaging because I can actually talk to people. You're not so much worried about,
yeah.
But it's interesting to me because I totally understand the other thing where it's like, I don't know what to talk about. I'm just like picking herbs and making potions. You know what I mean? So it's interesting.
Well, and playing a paladin is probably the safest class for hardcore anyway. So
yeah.
So there's a lot of escape buttons and ways to avoid your fate, which is what made the warrior clip so different, because I had never been in that situation hardly before then without, not that we need, too late, we already did the callback, right? But yeah, just on the warrior, it's because that's arguably the hardest class. Although to be honest, I found druid to be much harder.
Interesting. Why is that?
Just personally. I don't enjoy playing a druid, so
that's a big part of it. Like, I think for me with hardcore, I have to like the character I'm playing in order to want to keep them alive. You know what I mean? So there's something there that if I don't like the character, then whatever, then I'm going to let them die kind of a thing. So it's interesting too. I think, especially when we're talking about like RPGs, like the element to which someone role plays and has a connection to their character, I think is interesting, because I think for some people, it's just a video game that you're controlling a thing and it doesn't matter. But I think for a lot of us who played WoW prior to hardcore, there is this kind of like internal canon of like the personality and your connection with the character,
Yes. My retail paladin that I re-rolled when I had to switch servers to start playing with my brother-in-law's guild at the tail end of Wrath.
Okay.
Is a person unto himself at this point, with a personality and a backstory that exists only in my head.
Totally. Yeah. I'm very similar. Like Abbers is my naked mage, and there's this whole life that she has in my head that never was necessarily spoken out loud, And
you spent so much time with that character.
I did, yeah. 2 weeks of my life. It's my shining achievement. Yeah.
No regrets.
No regrets. It was COVID quarantine. What else was I gonna do with my time? Go ahead.
Sorry. Just is there something you want, buddy? I love you. Who loves you? You can ask your brother. Okay, you can have a snack. It's snack time. Oh yes, he's recently become aware of the fact that he needs to shave,
Ah.
and so his mom hates that he doesn't always want to shave, but
Mm,
so he gets the prickles on his chin, and he loves to like sneak up behind her and just rub his chin on her cheek,
lovely.
and of course she screams, and everybody's happy except her sometimes.
Yep. Yep. That's funny. Going back to something we were just talking about with the
Mhm.
numbers, you mentioned that Subnautica kind of changed your numbers, getting a camera changed your numbers. What is your relationship to the numbers and the algorithm kind of part of it?
Well, before I started streaming, I was watching a lot of Baba's content,
Okay, yeah.
Baba's Hair Show, um, and uh, and he had said many, many times that the best advice he ever got before started streaming was to turn off the numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know about every streaming software, but some of them at least, and the Twitch overlay or not overlay, the stream manager page or whatever they call it has an option to display how many people are watching you.
Yeah.
And he said the best advice he ever got was to turn that off.
Yeah.
So you don't know how many people are watching you. So you always feel like you're on, right? So that you're
Yep.
always so you're always assuming that there's people watching you.
Mm-hmm.
I need the opposite reinforcement.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
Yeah, I need to feel even if it says one, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
enough for me to be able to want to engage. And
Interesting.
good grief, you don't really want a snack. You just want me. If you want a snack, you can ask your brother. If he said, "Wait a minute," you just got to be patient. No, I love you, buddy. You want to shave tonight? Yeah, you change your mind on that every few minutes. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I mean the numbers, the num the size of the number doesn't matter to me. Like I don't care if it's like 3 people or 10 people, which is
Yeah.
kind of the two extremes that I tend to run into lately. Um, but the fact that I know that I feel like I know that there's somebody there
Mm-hmm.
is what inspires me to keep going. I mean, I never, especially with Subnautica Below Zero, I started streaming more to preserve the experience for me for later.
Yeah.
And I have to be careful when I'm going back to edit VODs for highlights
Mm.
that I don't just end up sitting and watching myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I
Totally.
find myself entertaining. I don't know.
I think
Obviously,
that's
other people
great
must too.
though, because to me, no, really, I really mean this. Like, don't get me wrong, I think we can all be self deprecating to a certain extent, but
Yes,
you have to think that you're entertaining in order to create content that other people are entertained by. I think, like, how
that there's value there.
yeah, but there's value
Yeah.
there because how else I would be hard pressed to believe that there's anyone out there that makes clips of themselves without thinking that it's worthwhile in some way. You know what I mean? So even a person with the lowest self esteem in the world, there's got to be a reason why you're making that, and you think that it's worthy of making. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, content
Yeah.
creation. It's fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, when I started it, I never thought I would become an affiliate. I thought it was just something I was going to do
Yeah.
as a hobby that was going to be fun, and it is fun.
Yeah.
If I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't keep doing it.
Sure.
Uh, and so when I mean, it's only well, I shouldn't say it's only thanks, but it's largely thanks to a couple of timely raids by a couple of other streamers that kind of at the time bumped my numbers over that 2.8
Mm-hmm.
average viewership number that and I was still couldn't believe when I got the email from Twitch saying you qualify for the affiliate program.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me?
And when was that? How long did that take?
Oh, I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
So started May. It would have been a little over a year, maybe
Okay.
a year and a half.
Okay. Yeah.
So not crazy long. I mean, there's people that get there kind of overnight,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, I never started it with, I never started streaming with the idea of quitting my job in mind. I mean,
Sure.
I hope too many people don't because it's not too likely to happen
Yeah.
statistically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never thought I would make 25 cents doing
Yeah.
this.
Well, and
I mean,
I
as
think too. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, I was just gonna say, as it stands, I could make more money in a year by picking up one extra shift at work of overtime
Sure.
than
Yeah.
I've made in 2023 with streaming. But I'm not going to turn down the cash, but I don't do it because there's any kind of a paycheck on the other end.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people, when they get affiliate, the most exciting thing is emotes, right? So it's not even
Yes.
necessarily I'm getting paid so much as I can make weird little cartoons that people can use in chat, you know?
Yes, and I always feel like I should do more with mine, and
Yeah.
it's like video editing. It's one of those things and I've talked with my son who does the art stuff, and he actually made one of my emotes. If you've seen the Blessed Day emote from my channel, he made that.
Nice.
Yes, and I have a couple of others that keep hoping he's going to make for me that I've asked him to, and same with him. Like, it's not a high priority, dad's little art project that he wants me to
Sure.
tackle, but
Yeah.
we'll see one day.
Yeah, all about, like you said, choosing where you want to spend your time, and that's a difficult thing to decide. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned something that I think is I just want to normalize this experience. I felt this way when I got affiliate. I think for most people, not everyone, but for most people, it's well-timed raids from bigger streamers, like that push that number over. I know
Yeah.
that's what it was for me, and I think that shouldn't necessarily change your view of your inherent value or what you have to offer. I think that's just the game, you know.
For sure. Yeah, and one of them was someone whose channel I had been a part of, whose content I had been enjoying for a while. Cherry Warrior, you might
Yeah,
recognize
yeah,
the
yeah.
name. And the other one was somebody totally random that I had never met before. Their stream rated me.
Interesting.
Was Periton.
Okay.
He streams. He at the time he was streaming mostly retail WoW, like doing mountain transmog farming and stuff like that. And now is playing some other games. But yeah, found me because of the family friendly tag that I have in my stream. And that's very much his vibe as well. Very very relaxed. Very family friendly. Like, sensitive to that kind of view, right?
Yeah.
I always said to myself before I started streaming that I wanted my content to be something that I would have been comfortable with my own kids watching,
Sure.
like before they were, when they were 8, 10, 12. And so sometimes it's not maybe necessarily still within those bounds, but for 90, the vast majority of the time,
I would say so. Yeah,
the case.
especially when you're looking at, the yardstick being other Twitch streams. I think you're doing fine, Pastor Dave. In this weird little world, I think you're very wholesome and family friendly. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, it's always dangerous to measure yourself in comparison to others,
Definitely.
but there is an aspect to that too, right?
Yeah.
That you can't totally dismiss where the bar is, sort of in that Twitch culture.
True.
And being someone who's not naturally really loud or energetic all the time, that brings a certain kind of person to your channel to stick around.
Yeah.
Actually, one of Periton's one of the folks who raided in with him has become my most in chat viewer.
Oh, really?
And yeah, she's pretty much in every stream at some point.
That's awesome.
And yeah, that in itself is humbling, right?
Yeah.
Something as little as rating somebody has built a connection that has been lots of fun.
Yeah.
And she probably easily has the record for most chat messages sent to the channel.
Very cool.
Yeah, which has been lots of fun.
Yeah. Well, this leads to a great question. Like, what kind of people tend to find your streams?
I like to think that a good percentage of them are people different from me, with different life experiences. I mean, because of my time slot in sort of the afternoon North America time, means that I do end up with a lot of viewers from Europe, and so that's been interesting too. A couple times there's been sort of some language struggles too, because for a number of them, English is not their first language, and I'm always in awe of their ability to manage a language that they didn't grow up with.
Yeah.
I mean, Canada has 2 official languages, and we have to take the other one in school, but yeah.
No French for you?
Well, I can understand 60% of what someone is saying to me
Okay.
if they're speaking in French.
That's not bad.
I did spend a few weeks in Quebec.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago now, and was deeply appreciative of the ones who could help, but also appreciated the ones who kind of forced me to work a little bit harder.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so along with that, like what are some maybe first impressions or takeaways that you hope people get from your streams?
Well, like we were saying before too, that I do enjoy what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
That I am not putting on some show, right? That it's me playing video games and chatting with whoever's there. And sometimes it feels like me just narrating what I'm doing and why I'm doing it in the game. But I've very much enjoyed when people do ask questions, or when they have something to say, right? If they're if they're doing the love is in the air thing and they're mount farming for whatever mount is in the holiday that's currently up, then expressing their frustrations at not getting things, having things drop or whatever. But when and where people are comfortable to hear what they're going through and chat with it about that. I mean, I'm not out to solve the internet's problem, and I don't feel like it's my job to tell people the solution to their problems.
Right.
But I'm more than happy to listen to them and try and empathize with what their frustration is.
Sure.
And I don't know. I have a. I'm not even sure how to describe it necessarily, but I do enjoy listening to people and listening. Like I said before, with games, right? I love a game that's got a story to it.
Yeah.
Well, you're never going to get a game that's got a more inventive story than somebody's life.
Interesting. Yeah.
So,
No,
so
that's a great way to look at it.
while I only ever get small pieces of someone else's life, the people that come around more often, I get a bigger picture of what their life is like and what they're like. And I'm not I am an introvert. But something about streaming takes the social pressure off. And so I feel more comfortable. I mean, it's my stream, right? So
Sure.
I'm the one who should be, I'm the only one who can talk, right? Everybody else can only type. So that gives me a certain amount of impetus to feel like not to feel like I have to, but to feel like it is my place to inject my thoughts.
Totally.
Or my whatever's going on.
Yeah.
In relation to what I'm hearing, not what I'm hearing, what I'm reading, obviously, right? Or sometimes what I'm hearing in a game, because there are stories in the games that I tend to play.
Yeah. Well, and mentioning earlier kind of having this fear of public speaking before being a pastor, and then I think Twitch is its own kind of form of public speaking. There is something about this environment that I think for a lot of people, like I would say the overwhelming majority of the people that I've talked to would identify as being introverts, which is fascinating because you're right, when you see them streaming, they are the show. So it's fascinating to me how many of us have found this kind of platform as a place to be a public speaker where we may not otherwise in other spaces,
Yeah. And I mean, the big difference for me, of course, is that, preaching is pretty well not pre-recorded, but pre-prepared.
Yeah. It's not as improvisational, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, it can be. There's aspects of that to it sometimes.
Okay.
I guess I'm thinking more of, again, the last church I pastored at where everything was online, and so you had a time limit and you had to kind of be a little more, things were a little more more formulaic in that sense, than they can be in a church service that's not in front of a camera.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, there's always meetings and conversations about other kinds of things that are going on. So there's that side of it too that I guess I have as a background.
Yeah. Yeah. Who are some of your streaming inspirations, or what kind of streams do you enjoy watching?
Some of them are a little bit like me in that, I mean, most of them are like me in that they are a little more relaxed. Not that there aren't occasional loud moments, but Randall Thor 1966 is a long dark streamer, who's a very easygoing, very relaxed sort of person, very concerned and caring about the people in his chat, and he's an older, probably the oldest streamer I guess I know. I'm not sure exactly how old he would be, but I'm gonna guess late 50s.
Okay.
Yeah, the funny thing is that the streamers that most inspired me to stream are sort of more on that higher energy, or have been in the past, sort of in that higher energy. Again, some of the guys that I follow from 2012 when I first started my Twitch account, half of them don't stream anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They left for various reasons, and the ones that do are 10 years older now than they were when they started. So they're in their middle 30s and have mellowed, and some of them have kids now and those kinds of things. Yeah, I mean, hardcore has been the biggest avenue to kind of open my field of view to different streamers and that. And it seems like there's always somebody new, and like in real life, your circle can only expand so far, I feel.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm kind of reaching the limit of what, and again, with there only being so much time, like I can hop into someone's stream for 20 minutes before I start, or for 15 minutes kind of at the end of my stream. But either that, or it's sometimes for a couple hours after, like in the evenings. So there's very different people, and people from different time zones.
Sure.
That are around then. I'm not sure that there's the irony is that the vast majority of streamers that I do follow absolutely do not fit into the family friendly category.
Yeah. I was gonna say, what do you do? How did you get here, Pastor David? No.
Well, we can blame Baba for
totally.
For that.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure the first time I was in your stream, he had rated you at
that
the
makes
end
sense.
of his show there, and it must have been a really odd stream for him, because usually he streamed way later than I was up.
Yeah, he's
right?
a night
I
owl.
have to go to bed like halfway through his streams there, so yeah, I mean, I grew up on the West Coast. Being the white guy, I was culturally in the minority. So those things don't really, I don't know, they don't really bother me. Like I had plenty of friends in high school who had the proverbial potty mouth, and ironically, I did. Maybe I shouldn't say ironically, but I absolutely did too before I came to faith, and it was almost like a switch, like a light switch flipping off, that just suddenly I didn't need to say all those words anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not judging you for saying them. It wasn't something I felt was important anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way it's gone now, like some streamers, every third word is a four-letter word, and like, does it mean anything anymore at that point?
Well, I find language to be fascinating. I teach English to speakers of other languages, so it's not English in terms of like literature so much as English in terms of communication. And so the way my relationship to words, I think, is kind of I don't know, maybe different than other people's because of that. And so when we're talking about like communicating an idea, like this idea of like, does it have meaning anymore? That for me is kind of the fascinating thing about cursing, I guess, is like, for one, it very much tells you what social group or you're kind of part of and accepted in, right? But also they are just words, like, and they're not like it's interesting because I think that communication and words are so impactful, and also I'd say the F word every other sentence normally. I'm on good behavior because, you know, your kid keeps coming in and out, and you got pastor in the name, and so I feel the need to be respectful. But yeah, it's interesting. I think it's a very nuanced conversation because I think that context is so much of language. And so especially when we're talking about like curse words, I think context is huge, you know?
It was very interesting when I started working at the agency I am now. Like the agency I work for operates a couple of group homes where adults with disabilities live in the group homes. We also have some what we call independent clients who rent their own apartments or whatever. And I said, you need to talk to your brother. He can help you. He knows that. He just wants my attention.
Yeah.
Who can blame him, right?
Right.
Anyway, yes, when I first started working there, and like I was training, and so I didn't know everybody, obviously, right? But so people would ask, like, where are you from? Where do you live? Like, what did you do before this? Because I was just starting, right? And so I didn't keep it a secret. Whenever anybody asked, I would tell them, like, before I started here, I was a pastor for 15 years. And they're like, oh my God, I can't believe how much like what I said 5 minutes ago, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, and I am like whatever, like I appreciate, that there are people who feel that way, knowing what I used to do for a career.
Sure.
But at the same time, I don't expect you to censor yourself just because I walk into the room.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That's too much power and responsibility, and I don't want it.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you how to live your life, Abbers.
Thank you. Well, again, that's part of why I felt comfortable asking you to be part of this. That's huge to me. Well, and I think, there's something too that's interesting about cursing, because these individual words that we're talking about are way more impactful and like kind of shocking when you use them sparingly, right? And so there's something to me about using them all the time. Like you said, it takes away their power, and it's just kind of part of your vernacular and not a big deal. But it's fascinating to me. The context part of it, I think, is really interesting. Like, I remember growing up, like, if my parents cussed, it was like, oh, like we're in trouble. Like, oh God, like
using your middle name, right?
Yeah,
like,
totally. Yeah. It's really interesting. People of Twitch chat, we're going to turn it over to you in just a little bit here. So if you have questions for Pastor Dave, go ahead and throw them into chat, and we'll get into it right away.
Bring it. Yeah.
Sable says, when I stub my toe, I want it to feel like the shadow word pain. That was my mom.
I think that's what they
up,
modeled the spell around, actually.
100%. Yeah.
Because the pain doesn't go away, right? Mm-hmm. It just keeps going and keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know.
Eventually it runs out, but it's there for a while.
It's ticking damage. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What are some things that have maybe surprised you since you started streaming?
I guess going back to what we said before, I am a little bit surprised that there has not been much, if anything, in the way of people showing up and kind of trying to be adversarial, right, towards faith, or like, oh, I knew a pastor and he was a terrible person, and like just having people come in and vent and stuff like that, or like that surprised me for probably the first 2 years, which is the majority, I guess, of my time. Now I just kind of I just kind of expect it, like, that there's not going to be much of that, if anything.
Yeah.
What? I said, you can ask your brother. He's there to help you. Other things that have surprised me, I think just about how much little communities do kind of pop up, right? And how easy it is to get to know somebody, or feel like you get to know somebody, because there's, I'm never going to know what happens off camera, right? Unless you choose to share that. But to feel like you do get to know a bit of a slice of someone's life.
Yeah.
And then when you learn something more about them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the fact that they do emotes, or the fact that they work with disabled people like myself, or
Yeah.
like things like that you wouldn't necessarily think about them until that comes across in somebody's um somebody's tweet that they put out to, on their official Twitter. We can still call it that, right?
I always call it. I will never call it X. I refuse.
Yeah, I still have the logo on my starting and ending pages that has the bird
Yeah,
on
why
it.
would I
So
change it? That's so silly. Yeah.
that's too much work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, again, yeah, coming back to this idea of like everybody has these kind of different aspects of who they are that you're not necessarily going to see on stream. I think that's, and the way that that kind of can form community when those things do come to light, I think is really, really kind of beautiful actually in so many ways. Like, I think that,
Yeah, well,
yeah, go ahead.
so many people that I would never have met anyone even remotely like,
Yeah.
or never have been exposed to. I mean, there's a little bit of that where I work, because there's between 70 and 80 employees at the agency that I work at. Um, and so yeah, so like one of the guys on our management team is a gay fella that I never would have met otherwise, most likely. Lives a couple towns over from me, but of all the people that I work with, is probably the person I get along with the best.
Yeah.
Like we share a bit of a sense of humor, and he doesn't feel um, intimidated by my sort of religious outlook at life, and his obviously not so religious outlook on life.
Mm,
I shouldn't say obviously not, because that's not fair, but he's very not very not religious.
yeah.
But we can talk about work stuff. We can talk about, it's not like we ramble on for hours and hours about our families or his husband or whatever. But like, like we can talk about it just as a normal thing, right? Oh,
Right.
well, like, can you work that shift day? Well, I have to check with my wife, or, like, um, so, but again, with streaming, there's so many more people out there to connect to, that whose company you might enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's not something that you would necessarily come across in your circles the way they have been, right?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. You mentioned that you very rarely, if ever, get people that are adversarial. In moments that you do, how do you handle that? How do you go about that?
Uh, I try to be understanding,
Yeah.
because most of the time, well, there's two possibilities, right? Either they're coming into the channel and their goal is to be as disruptive or as offensive as possible to try and get a reaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they have a legitimate background, right? Legitimate pain or trauma from a religious experience or situation, and they need help with it, honestly, right? Like,
Yeah.
and in neither case do I want to push them away,
Yeah.
um, because whichever person it is, it's confirming their worst fears, right?
Mm, yeah.
So not overreacting, and I'm not an overreactor to begin with, so that helps, I guess, right? And again, with my parents, my wife's mother actually had some very well, I shouldn't say very, but relatively heavy sort of religious trauma when she was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there, had a very negative experience with someone in religious leadership, and basically quit going, right? Like, I am
Yeah.
not going back to any of that. Not that her beliefs necessarily changed, but like because of that one experience, the institution of church was off the table for her.
Yeah.
And who can blame her,
Right.
right? I'm not going to blame her.
Mm-hmm.
And because blame isn't the solution, right? Blame isn't like blame the person who did the bad thing,
Right.
right? But don't it's common sense now, but don't blame the victim.
Right.
If you're angry
You would
at,
think it would be common sense, and
you would
yet,
think, yes,
we very
right?
much live in a victim blame kind of culture, especially when we're talking about structures with these kind of power dynamics and
Yeah.
hierarchies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the attempt of the power to preserve its image,
You're right.
right?
Yeah.
It's not, or at least it shouldn't be, the view of the everyday people that make up um that organization, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, there's different structures of church leadership, right? Like some churches, it's like the person at the top is in charge and everything goes exactly the way they want. Other churches, it's very democratic, and pastors have to be voted in by members of a church in order to come in, and then there's votes on, who's involved in what levels of leadership, and so there is a lot more um sort of independence and room for varying viewpoints
Yeah.
in many, in which is good. Both systems have their faults, and I know which one I prefer, but both systems do have advantages, but like any system, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think what's kind of been the theme of the podcast, right? We have to remember that everybody involved is a person,
Yeah.
right? Whether you're walking through the door for the first time, which was actually the most interesting thing about being a part of a church that streamed its services online. 99%, I shouldn't say 99%, 90% of the people who walked in the door of the building on a Sunday for church would say that they had been watching us online for at least 3 months.
Wow.
Checking it out, trying to see, what we were like, what we were about, what our focus was, how they thought they would feel to actually be in the building, whether or not they would be. Basically what they were telling us was that they were concerned about being judged when they walk into the church.
Yeah, and feeling safe, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it provides that opportunity, that window to look inside, just like streaming. You can't see everything,
Yeah.
but you can see what's being said from, during announcements. You can see what's being said during the sermon. You can see, what's being talked about and what kind of events are happening. And so it really was a way for people to feel more comfortable in advance.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, it was a neat experience.
It sounds like it, yeah. Sable asks, do you read biblical scholars like Bart Ehrman? I think I'm saying that. I hope I'm saying that right. And do you feel like there's a relationship between apostasy and scholarship? Not the causative one, but just a correlation, or at least, that's interesting.
I'm not familiar with that person, whoever they're referencing. I'm not familiar with the scholar in question. I mean, because I have a 4-year Bible school degree.
Okay, yeah.
My degree is actually in cross-cultural communication.
Oh, interesting.
So I actually trained to be a missionary rather than a pastor. I knew I was going, or at least I was pretty sure I was going into pastoral style of ministry, but missions has always interested me, and so there was a couple different things that led to that result. But I haven't really looked at too much in the way of like ongoing scholarship stuff since those days, since I graduated in 2003. So so as far as, I mean, the question is about sort of apostasy and what was it, scholarship?
Yeah. Maybe
Right.
the relationship between those two things.
Right. There is a school of thought that suggests that the more education you have, the less, and I'm going to use a word that is awkward to use, but the less charismatic you tend to be. And that's an awkward word because it means so many different things to so many different people.
Sure, yeah.
It's like the word evangelical, right? It carries a lot of connotations in some contexts that are extremely negative. Like the denomination that I pastored in would be considered an evangelical denomination. But in the biblical interpretation of that word, it literally means like the evangel is the gospel, the good news of Jesus and all that entails. And so evangelical is supposed to be focused on Jesus. End of story. Like, that's not what it means politically in the US, right?
Yeah.
Because again, the context of words and how it gets twisted and changed, and because the biblical academic word is very niche,
Mm-hmm.
right? It doesn't have a lot of use outside of specific religious circles. So when I say charismatic, I tend to mean more. It's hard to put into words that aren't religious, right? But more passionate, flamboyant preaching, and even worship can be considered charismatic in that it is very, very passionate, very emotionally centered. And not that any of those things are bad, right? Our emotions are a big part of who we are. They shouldn't be the only part of who we are, but every one of us has them.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us struggle with one side of the spectrum of them, and some of us struggle with the other side of the spectrum with them. But so yes, that's. I don't want to say that that's necessarily a causal relationship, but there is probably some merit to the perception.
Mm.
But I think that's more to do with the fact that the people who are more likely to gravitate towards, deep intellectual study of things are not the people who are likely to be, they're more likely to be people who are weighing words carefully and considering context and meaning, and not necessarily trying to shout their own particular viewpoint from the loudest megaphone, right?
Sure.
They're I think it's more a result of personality and interests and those sorts of things than it is about the scholarship. The deep study brings people away from that kind of intense passion for things. I think it's more sort of a separation of personalities than it
Interesting.
is of the subject material causing those personality changes.
I do find it fascinating. This is something, again, someone who's raised in the church is now pretty atheist agnostic. And I know my Bible fairly well from having been raised in the church, and so it's fascinating to me how many people kind of get to this place of skewing it in terms of, like, again, being a word person, Christian, you're a follower of Christ. Don't really live that and look at what that is. And so the fact that there is, and this goes back to any religious dogma, but we're talking about Christianity right now.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it can get twisted into this place of hatred and judgment, and specifically kind of hatred of people on the fringes and marginalization. It's like, have you read your New Testament? Do you remember what Jesus was all about? It's fascinating to me the way that I don't know, the people engage with the kind of written dogma part of it. And I think on some level, regardless of whether or not we're talking about religion, I think there is a tendency to kind of pick and choose what is convenient for you given a situation.
Well, that's how you radicalize somebody, right?
Right, totally.
Take as much as you possibly can out of context to mean the thing that's going to incense them the most.
Yeah.
Right? Make them the most angry at whatever system you want to point them at as a target. And that I think any belief system has the potential to do that.
Sure.
But the reality is that anybody who's radicalized to that extent, I think has whether intentionally or not, has missed the core points of whatever their belief system is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I cannot sit here and say that does not happen in Christian religious circles, because it obviously does.
Yeah.
And it's a tragedy regardless of what religion it is, right?
Yeah.
It's a tragedy on from multiple angles, right? Because of the damage it does to the individual, but also because of the damage it does to the religion in question, right? Like,
Sure.
I mean, Christianity has suffered terrible blows over the last 100 years of things coming to light, and things being even things that are being taught now, right, in schools about what was done to First Nations people in Canada by different religious groups. I mean, that the lion's share of that has only come out in the last 25 years. And like, I didn't learn about it growing up in high school. My kids are, and so I'm learning about it from them.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic, but also terribly humbling.
Yeah.
And like I say, it's a tragedy on so many levels. because it not only does it put my faith into disrepute, but by extension myself, right?
Yeah.
Which is the least tragic part of it to me, right?
Sure.
Like because my life is impacted, so little
Mm-hmm.
by all of that. So I find it frustrating because of that.
Yeah.
But again, like I say, I cannot hold it against somebody for feeling the way they feel because, pardon me, I think I might be catching the cold that's
Oh
going around.
no, I hope you all feel better soon.
It's probably just because I was singing in church this morning and I've been talking for the last 2 hours, so
Sure, yeah.
that doesn't help. But yeah, like it's such an unfortunate thing, but so understandable,
Yeah.
right? For people to, and the reality is that, and again, can't fault anybody for doing it, but like my mother-in-law who walked away and would not have anything to do with organized religion anymore. So her siblings still went to church, still do to this day, go every day, and my mother-in-law passed before my wife and I were actually married, um, like anybody's attempts to try and drag her back, into that place is not going to accomplish what they hope it's going to accomplish, right? Because they hope she would have been able to move on and come back and be part of that social fabric of the religious community again, which it's not impossible for that to happen, but a person has to be ready.
Totally.
And a person has to be willing.
Absolutely.
Right? And coming to that place of being both ready and willing is going to take more than their family trying to ask them back, right?
Absolutely.
It's gonna take the opportunity to process what happened. And I mean, Christianity talks a lot about forgiveness, right? Doesn't mean we're necessarily experts at doing it. We're just experts at talking about it.
Right.
And maybe using it as a guilt trip at times, but
Yeah.
but there is something very powerful about forgiveness if you choose to extend it.
I think also it's very possible to forgive while also recognizing that this is a place that harmed me and I'm not going back.
Yes.
Yeah. I think to me, often in this kind of conversation, like, because it's this idea of like, we have this like capital C Christianity, we're talking about the church, the structure, all of that, versus individual Christians within that can run the gamut of what we're talking about. And so I think to me, anyone that wants to extend kind of allyship to like, we'll use your mother-in-law in this example, to people that have been harmed by the church. To me, it is more impactful and makes more sense to use your energy to talk to the people in your parish and in your circle about how to be kind and respectful and non-judgmental of those people, rather than focusing on the person that went away from the church, if that makes sense. Like, because then I think you're focusing on creating a safe environment rather than having someone believe that the environment is safe,
For sure. And I mean, 100, 200 years ago, the solution to that was, if you're going to step out of line, we're going to shun you, right?
Sure, right.
And not every group necessarily, but that was the common take on, oh, well, you're going to do X, Y, Z, well, you can't come here anymore. Like, and then it transitioned to, well, we don't like that. That's not good. But if you stop, you can come back. And then it came to the place of like, no, really, like, almost like that tug of war sort of thing, right? And I don't think any of those three is ultimately healthy. I mean, the first two are obviously unhealthy. The third one seems like it should be unhealthy to me, like trying to drag somebody where they don't want to go, even intellectually. And yeah, I mean, you used the word, allyship there before, and that's a term that has kind of become more common lately, right? Like being an ally to whatever. And I was even thinking about that today, this morning, about being an ally. And I like to say that, well, I haven't even said it before, but I'm going to verbalize it for you now. Like,
we're making history here, folks.
That's right. I would say that I am an ally to people, right? Yourself, other people that I've met and know, like, it's a journey that everyone has to go on, right? But
Yeah.
I believe in people, and I believe people need the help of other people,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the essence of community, right? That we
Yeah,
help one another. And
absolutely.
so regardless of how different your views and opinions and choice of, you know, what word to use when you're angry might mean, if you're a person, then I want to support you, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I have religious beliefs, and on the one hand, I can believe that my faith is true and real, and I can believe that my faith would work for you should you choose to embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my choice whether or not you embrace it.
Yeah.
It's not my choice whether or not anybody does.
Mm-hmm.
And we've struggled and wrestled with some of this because our youngest son has pulled away from attending church, and is still, I mean, he's 17, so he's coming into his own as a person, right? And he's got to
Yeah.
establish his own personality independent from us, and that's a natural progression. You don't need my help. Your brother can help you, or your mother can help you. Wow. My lovely wife, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you
Oh,
can see her on
yay.
camera.
Well, no, we love the
Uh,
guest stars. I was going to say, Maddie Brady's like, we have guest stars. Yeah.
I I think my son's been here more than he's been not here, but
Well, I wonder too if it's because you're talking to a person that there's something like
yes,
intriguing about that, right? It's
yeah,
different than just talking to your video game.
he loves to come in when I'm in the long dark, and he loves when the character in the game goes to sleep.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
he wants me to go into a house and go to sleep because for some reason he identifies with that, you
Yeah.
know, going in and going to
It's
bed
like
and the
this
screen
character's
gets
doing a
dark
real
and
life thing that I understand.
yeah,
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
for sure.
Matty Brady says, yeah, there's bad eggs in every carton. And he mentions that my parents' church sucks, but my uncle's church, which he's the pastor of, is great in my opinion.
Mm,
And I think yeah, that speaks to what we're talking about as well. Like, not all churches are created equal. Not like I say that a lot with therapy. I'm a big proponent
right,
of
yeah.
therapy, and it's the same kind of thing where it's like not all therapists are created equal. Like you have to find what
And
works
not
for
all therapists are a
you.
good fit for you, exactly, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I've had people who have challenged me and pushed back before about Christianity, because of course that's the circle, right, that
Right.
I'm in.
Yeah.
But you know, asking questions like, why are there so many different groups?
Yeah.
You know,
There's a
like there
lot of
literally like
diversity in it. Yeah.
thousands of, but because people are different, you
Hmm.
know, like I mean, there's ethnic groups that are different, obviously. Like I've been involved in churches that have, you know, that in on Sunday afternoons they rent their space to the Filipino church or to the we there's a church, the church that I was a part of growing up actually had a very strong East Indian community that met in a separate part of the building on Sunday mornings, and 4 or 5 times a year we would have like joint services with the whole crowd together, and those were the most exciting times for me
Hmm.
in high school, which is one of the reasons that I got a little more interested and involved in missions over the years.
Yeah.
Just the way different cultures process not only relationships but faith and belief too. You know, I
Hmm.
mean the Christian church in North America is a relatively small sliver of the global Christian church, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so there are so many things that we focus on in the North American context that are totally not even thought or worried about in churches in Asia or or Europe, right? Like where the issues and situations are very different. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I think too, this is kind of interesting to me because again, I'll mention that I really appreciate that you're someone who lives your faith very, very openly, and at the same time, I've never felt like you push it on anyone. You're just open about it, and so that to me is a little bit at odds with the idea of missions, which is kind of fascinating. So I'm just curious for you. Well, I'm curious too. Is there ever temptation? Maybe temptation's a funny word in this context, but temptation to maybe make your stream a little bit more mission driven.
uh I don't think that's what I want it to be.
Yeah.
Which is obviously what matters. And more than happy to chat about it and help people ask questions or find answers to questions they might have, because I think that's something that more and more people don't have these days,
Yeah.
is somebody from a religious perspective that they can ask questions of,
Yeah.
whether it's Christianity or not, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
especially again, North American and a certain amount of the European context too, right? Churches are not as prevalent or as populated as they used to be, um, which is a natural consequence of some of the things that we've talked about, right?
Yeah. Right.
Uh, again, for better or for worse, right? There's
Sure.
downsides to it too.
Yeah.
Um, and the best experiences I've ever had engaged in missions, because I've been to Thailand, and I've been to Estonia as a missionary, and to Mexico. Um, but in all those contexts, the most impactful opportunities I've had have been one-on-one conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, if there's a missions team that's going somewhere, I think the best thing to do is to be going to support a local congregation that already exists there,
Yeah.
right? There's a group on the ground in that place that you want to vet them beforehand, right? You want to know,
Mm-hmm.
and there's lots of international ways to do that, right? Denominations talk to each other and all kinds of stuff, um, but to have a place or a group of believers that is there that you can work with, that you can support, that you can encourage, and also that you can um, it provides an opportunity to build relationships outside of that group that it wouldn't otherwise have,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you go to some places in Africa and it's come see the white person, you
Mm-hmm.
know, which whatever, right? I mean, that's just what's going to happen in certain contexts. Or come see the Canadian. One of the folks that I met when I was in Estonia, um, she ended up actually moving to the United States and marrying an American fellow. Um, but their relationship started like that. I have a friend who's a missionary, who went on a short term trip for I think 2 or 3 weeks. Ended up meeting and getting to know the translator, who was a believer as well. But to make a very long story short, they're married now and living in that country that he originally went to visit for a few months.
Yeah.
Um, but so I I think I think it's the one-on-one conversation that is going to change a person's perception of faith and what it means, and who Jesus is, um, because I mean relationships drive pretty much all that we do in one sense or another.
Mm-hmm.
I mean they're the motivation for, like, I mean, we're all changing and growing, right? And if we're in a long-term relationship with someone, we grow and change in a response to being close to that person.
Mm-hmm.
Then, like my kids have impacted me, I'm sure I've impacted them. And missions is a little bit like that. The way I view it is
Yeah.
that it provides a bit of a oh, come and see opportunity, but then what grows out of that, like, that's not the most important thing, but what grows out of that and the relationships that um, that grows and sparks, and some of them don't go anywhere and some of them do,
Yeah.
just like my conversations with people at work, right? Some
Yeah.
of them are like, oh, you used to be a pastor, well, I don't have anything more to say to you,
Yeah.
other than that's not work related, because everybody that I work with has been very professional
Yeah.
on that sort of thing. But there are some people who are not excited about that, uh, and there's been a couple of people who've been borderline hostile,
Hmm.
to the fact that I just the fact that I go to church, let alone the fact that I was a pastor for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But the majority of people I find are more interested in who I am than what my occupation used to be, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really like this idea too of, I don't know, because I've always thought of missions as like, how many people can we convert, kind of like that being like the goal, you know?
Yeah.
And I like this kind of different kind of paradigm around it. Some like building connection with a congregation, like you said, that's already in place, and learning from a different cultural perspective with regard to the same religious belief. There's something about that to me is much more, I can get behind that much more easily than I can get behind the kind of previous idea that I had, you know?
Yeah, and the unspoken reality of a well done, well organized, well planned missions experience. The reality of it is that it changes the people who go more than it changes the reality of
Sure.
where they're. I mean, there are exceptions to that, right? Where there's something, you know, dramatic or unusual that happens, and it sparks a bigger event in that, or a bigger change in that location, which is fine.
Yeah.
And again, a well organized, well planned trip doesn't focus on the team that's going and say, oh, you guys are going to be, you know, you're going to change and grow through this. It is about serving, to me, ultimately. And I think that's what the church at its best is in the communities that the church serves, is to serve, right?
Yeah.
Do things that make a difference, that have an impact to make the community as a whole better.
Yeah.
And there's two sides to that, right? And for some people, that's always going to be about trying to convince as many people as possible that Jesus died and rose again, and all that entails. But for me, it's like serving someone. Like it's like serving, or how am I? It's always tricky to explain things, but
Yeah.
you know, it's like this morning, right? So like I said, on the weekends, it's usually me that gets up when our son does, because my wife usually has to get up with him when I'm at work. And so it's on the weekends when I'm home, during the week, everybody's got to get up because there's school and everything else going on. So as a husband, I don't always, you know, there's times when I want to sleep in too, but I'm choosing to do something that will make her life better. Not because I want her to love me, but because I love her.
Yeah.
Right. And so does it make her love me more? Maybe. Is that the reason I do it? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's funny. I think this parallels oddly well with streaming in terms of this idea of like, I think that for a lot of people, if your motivation is the numbers, you will be disappointed and potentially resentful. If your motivation is, and it doesn't have to be this, right? Like again, with this podcast, I think so many different people have so many different motivations, but if we're kind of juxtaposing these two ideas, if your motivation is community and meeting people and learning from other people, I think it's going to be much more satisfying, you know?
Yeah, and it allows you to grow as a person too, right? I mean, that's been like, because again, the folks that I've been following on Twitch for a decade, there's a little bit of that parasocial thing where like their lives have changed, you know, like they have a kid now or whatever, and that's you know, for some people that's just like an inside window. It's a little bit of voyeurism, right, into somebody else's life.
Yeah.
But for me, it's the opportunity to see people grow as people, right? You know, someone who's single who then enters a relationship, or the relationship ends and things transition, and to, again, there's that weird part of being sort of a peripheral part of that, but again, seeing people's stories and seeing their growth as people, right? As they learn new things, as they learn who they are or who they want to be, and make changes. I hope that ping didn't come through the audio.
It didn't. You're good. Yeah.
Oh, good. They used to come through my streams, but
Fun.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's the great, you know, it's the great duality of streaming, right? It's a window into somebody's life, and you know, should every streamer, you know, bring the rest of their life into the stream the way I do? I mean, there's some people who bring way more of their life outside of streaming into their stream than I do. I think most people probably bring less.
Yeah.
But there's no hiding my kid, right? Who's going to come in.
Yeah.
And nor do I want to, right? So, and you know, never once had a negative reaction to him coming on, you know, coming up behind me and even though it ends up sometimes meaning I have to leave the computer for 5, sometimes 10 minutes at a time. He hasn't done it in a while, but he sometimes does this thing where he refuses to leave the school
Yeah.
when it's time to walk home.
Yeah.
And so then I have to get up and and go to the school and pick him up, and sometimes he doesn't even want to come home when I get there. So
Yeah.
it's been a couple of times where I've had to leave for 10 or 15 minutes, and every time it happens, I am astounded that the viewer count in the top corner does not change.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Maybe that's
something
because
neat,
nobody's
yeah.
really paying attention to me.
You're just background noise. It's fine.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And that's, I mean, the reality for me is that practically the only time I get to watch streams now is when I am doing something else, whether it's editing
Definitely.
VODs or whether it's playing a game myself off stream or whatever. So
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Maddie Brady says, I'm nosy, so I like that kind of stuff. That's why I love daily bloggers. Yeah. Daily bloggers. Yeah.
Oh dear. Yeah.
And he says, it's okay to have other aspects of your life in a stream. It makes it more human. Yeah.
For sure. It does.
And there's a line, right? Like we kind of talked a little bit before. Obviously, there's boundaries, and obviously there are things that you keep for yourself and for your family that you're not putting out there. And I think that line is a little bit different for everyone, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I try not to, like, I don't mention the name of the agency I work for or the town that I live in. I mean,
Right.
a corner of a province is about as specific as I want to get.
Yep.
I try not to mention my family's names directly on stream. Every now and again, it slips out.
Sure.
Or my wife will say one of the boys' names when she's in the room.
Yeah.
But, like, I'm not, whatever, I live in the middle of nowhere, so the chances of anybody coming across me on the internet, that's one of the interesting things that I guess hasn't come up so far, is the fact that other than the fact that my family knows I stream, nobody else I know in real life knows that I stream
Interesting.
video games on the internet.
Is that intentional on your part?
It started out intentional on my part.
Yeah.
I just haven't, I don't know, bridging that gap is not impossible. I think the vast majority of people I know in real life would just be confused by the whole concept.
Yeah, totally.
Again, the agency I work for, like I said, there's 70 or 80 employees. There's maybe 7 or 8 guys.
Mm-hmm.
And not that video games are a guy only thing, but just, again, the people that I've gotten to know that I might share that with are not video game people.
Yeah.
So I guess it's still sort of intentional.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't advertise to anybody I knew when I decided to start streaming, or when I started, so I don't have a Twitter account that isn't my Twitch associated account.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is as separate as it can be. And I'm still not sure if that's because I'm I'm embarrassed, or if it's because I'm self-conscious, or if it's just because I feel like they're very different worlds, even though I bring a fairly large amount of my personality and as you've seen, some of the outside stuff to the stream. I don't know that that I want a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
I guess my concern is that if people that I work with, or people that I like, people from church, for example, right? I'm sure some of them would not be thrilled about some of the things I've had to say about my faith, or about how I want my faith to, or to have them like pop on the stream and, oh, by the way, XYZ, how's things going with this, that, or the other thing that I didn't necessarily want to share on stream.
Sure. Sure.
And I know my wife has talked about it with some people. Like, Dave does this streaming thing that I don't understand, and like, I don't know why he wants to do it, or why he finds value in it, or why anybody else would want to watch my husband talk on the internet. But obviously she lets me get away with it, and get away with spending not an insignificant amount of time doing it. I know on occasion it does frustrate her. But like any relationship, some of the things she does occasionally frustrate me.
Yeah.
but you get over it, you move on, and if it's a bigger issue, you talk through it. And you know, like yesterday, I didn't think I was going to be able to stream it all because we were painting, and painting always takes longer than you think it's going to. But
For
then
sure.
we managed to wrap it up a little early, so I did manage to sneak in a couple hours,
Nice.
uh, which which I didn't have to do. You know, I could have just not done it, but it's something I enjoy. You know, and
Yeah.
it is. And as much as I feel there are a few people who would miss me if I didn't show up, I miss the people that would show up if I didn't do it.
Definitely. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
there's
get
that.
that. Well, and in terms of leaving, like keeping these worlds separate, I very much identify with like not wanting to put the energy towards explaining myself. That, you
Yes.
know, and then on top of
I
that,
can't.
like you said, having people kind of come in and like burst that bubble is like, I don't want that either, you know?
Yeah, I can't imagine trying to explain it as something a person does for a living.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, for me, I would have to make like 150% of my normal earnings in order to justify leaving my current job. So
I think that's true for
pretty
most
unlikely.
people. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, between the benefits and the vacation time and all
Absolutely.
those things that factor into it,
Yeah.
uh, and so whatever. When I started, it was never like the. I mean, I said I would never make affiliate, and I wasn't doing it for the notch on my belt or anything. I'll
Mm-hmm.
say it again now. I'm never going to end up being a Twitch partner, and that's even more likely to be true. But you know, there are people who stream less than I do who make partner,
Yeah.
um, and I'm excited for them. You know, I'm not jealous. I understand the limitations of who I am and what I do,
Mm.
and the fact that it is not really on brand for the, you know, in comparison to the channels that are bigger.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be those people. I'm never going to be that personality, and I'm totally okay with that.
Yeah.
Right? If I've already hit my streaming peak and it's all downhill from here, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I mean, yeah, I think that like, well, we were talking about this a little bit before we went live. This idea of like, you know, I share my link on social media when I have the wherewithal because maybe that's a thing that will help or I should do. And also, it is so. I don't want to say that there's not talent and skill involved because obviously there is. Of course there
Mm-hmm.
is. But there's also such a large percentage of it is luck in terms of right place, right time, all of that, you know? So it's a very volatile little world we live in here in Twitch.
Yeah. Yeah. You can control what you can control.
Hmm.
But the stuff you can't control, you really
You
cannot
really
control.
can't. Yeah.
And you can put yourself out there as much as possible. I was talking about it, something similar with my wife last night after supper, just about, or maybe it was this morning before church. Anyway, about the fact that she does baking, right? Like
Yeah.
she makes and sells
They're
Christmas baking,
beautiful, by the
and
way, the cookies that she decorates. Yeah.
I know, and so we were talking about that, and she said, you know, like she doesn't feel that they're that amazing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because for her, it's just, oh, I'm making cookies.
Mm.
You know, for her, it's not. I mean, for her, it is this big thing, especially around Christmas time. You know, our house basically shuts down for 2 or 3 weeks while cookies get decorated and everything
Amazing.
gets assembled. Uh, but you know, that's what she was saying, that like other people, it's not that her cook. She was saying that it's not that her product is so amazing, it's that other people can't do it,
Mm.
right? And it's not
Interesting.
even that other people. It's not even that other people can't do it. It's that other people don't have the passion or the time or
Mm-hmm.
the energy to commit to becoming good enough,
Yeah.
right? Or being up to that level. And you know, like, so like anybody else, right? She sees, you know, like she's part of like Pinterest groups and like on Facebook where she advertises stuff. She sees things that are like infinitely more intricate and time consuming than what she does.
Mm-hmm.
And so she sees what other people are doing and says, "Oh, well, mine aren't that impressive."
Mm-hmm.
But we actually did, for our Christmas celebration stream. I managed to talk her into decorating some cookies with me.
I'm so sad I missed that. Yeah.
I actually finally got the video onto my YouTube channel.
Nice.
So
Okay.
you can check that out. It is sort of the first part of the stream too. So
Yeah.
so go to 10 or 15 minutes in and you'll see that. But so you compare what she's able to do with what I'm able to do, right? And because I haven't put in the time, I haven't put in the energy, I haven't put in the effort of doing it for the last, like, she's been doing it for 9 or 10 years now.
Wow.
Selling Christmas baking.
I mean, they're beautiful. It really is impressive, I think. But yeah, I mean, it goes back to what we've been saying. It's all about how you choose to spend your time and your energy. And so it is impressive when people choose to spend their time and energy in something that they really love and they're passionate about, because you do see the I don't know, the outcome of that, I guess. Yeah. Maddie Brady says, here's a fun off-topic question. Any favorite reality TV shows or competition shows?
Oh, I don't really watch a lot of television.
Okay.
The media I consume is mostly Twitch and YouTube now, and podcasts, like when I'm commuting or whatnot. I do sit down and watch a show on occasion with my wife, like in the evenings when we're both home and there's a bit of time to relax. But yeah, I mean, I watched like the first season of Survivor, as did everybody, I think, and kind of lost interest in it after that.
Interesting.
Which is weird because it is there's a lot of parallels there between some of what happens on Twitch, right? Because it's very, I mean, there's some crossover, but there's some differences, right? It's much more produced and edited for television. But yeah, like meeting different people and I don't know. It's just not something that I've which is ironic because of the games that I have enjoyed. I mean, I mentioned The Long Dark a couple of times in Subnautica, and that sort of survival genre whereas the story is very internal in those games, right? Like the story is your journey from point A to point B to point C. And sometimes involves your failure and death and starting over. But it's very much the story. It's almost like the lore that builds up in your head when you're playing a World of Warcraft character,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
So it grows out of that, and I mean, I missed the whole Minecraft thing, and that's kind of where Minecraft started. My oldest still every now and again hops into Minecraft to do something creative, but yeah, I don't know. It's as far as reality TV, where that stuff is much more sort of curated and edited together, and they're seems like they're more and more trying to go for more shock value and dramatic twists and turns. The more don't want to say it's fake, but the more it is manipulated, right, the less it's appealed to me, and since its inception it's just become more and more manipulated, so it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
But fair question, like and lots of people are still into it.
Yeah.
And there's lots of newer takes on it that I have just completely like sidestepped.
Yeah. Well, and there's so much media to consume too that you pick the things you like, because we don't really have time for other stuff, I don't think.
Yeah, and we've since we've been married, we've never had, say, cable or satellite, and we didn't get Netflix until about 8 years ago, which seems like a long time when I say it.
Yeah.
But that was a long time after we would have liked to have gotten Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah.
The place we lived before, the internet was far too atrocious.
Gotcha.
It would have been 4 pixels on a screen if we were able to watch anything.
Nice.
And we still have pretty poor internet as far as global standards or North American standards go these days. And we could have like 300 internet here if I wanted to spend $1,500 and $150 a month on the the stuff, but it's just not. It's not would it be nice? Absolutely. Is it in the budget?
No,
not a chance.
Yeah.
So
what are some things maybe that you do to get ready for stream, or some things that you do afterward to kind of wind down?
Well, afterward is pretty much supper time for us as a family. So usually it's try and try if there's someone on that I because like I basically won't raid somebody whose channel I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
just because of the family friendly thing, and I know probably the lion's share of my viewers don't tune in because of the family friendly aspect of it, uh, but they respect it, and I deeply appreciate them for that.
Yeah.
We have a running gag about our chat, our auto mod, timing out people and censoring stuff, uh, totally unnecessarily, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't even make sense, but it's just because it's a computer program, right? So
Right.
it's inherently very flawed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's kind of a running gag, but I totally derailed myself with the chatbot thing.
That's okay.
What was the question again?
What are some things maybe that because like
Oh,
so
right,
after
unwinding
stream?
after stream, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so if I'm streaming, it's because I didn't work that day.
Mm-hmm.
So after stream is supper time, and depending on whether or not I've been making supper. Like usually, I'll do if it's my turn to cook, I will do something that's sort of pre. I can either pre-prep, in the slow cooker beforehand, or it's something relatively quick, like burgers I can do on the barbecue. Um, but yeah, so after supper, usually we're all home, unless my wife has a meeting of some kind, which she's on a couple of different sort of community committees.
Mm-hmm.
So it's rare, but usually we all get together and watch something as a family. Our oldest is very into anime, and so I've always been interested in anime, but never kind of because it can be some work to kind of, it's less work now than it used to be, but so he's been sharing some interesting shows with us that I've really enjoyed, for the most part. Uh, and then so we started way back, during COVID, when there was nothing else we could do. We
Mm.
started watching the original Star Trek,
Oh,
um,
okay.
and kind of worked our way through all of, well, not all, not the most modern stuff, but like all of the classic Star Trek up to and
Okay.
including the Enterprise show. um, and it was interesting to watch that with my kids, right? Because they, first of all, they've never had television with commercials.
Hmm.
um, so to try and like educate them on what it was like to watch TV, like how
Yeah.
they do, like every so often they do like a recap episode, like a clip show episode, where
Yeah.
they like show this bit and that bit and this bit and that bit to kind of bring everybody up to speed. I had to explain to them that that's because you know people didn't, like, not everybody had a VCR that they could set with a
Right.
timer to record the show, and so people would miss things, and
Right.
then the season finale would be coming up and they would be lost without this context,
Mm-hmm.
right? And some of the history behind some of the firsts that Star Trek did
Yeah.
with talking, somewhat veiled through metaphors and whatever, with alien races, about racism and prejudice and some of those things, which now we look back on them and it's super cheesy,
Mm-hmm.
but at the time was literally revolutionary, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And to appreciate how far things have come in a relatively short span of time,
Mm.
we definitely had some interesting conversations,
Yeah.
and some interesting conversations about stuff that wasn't necessary. Like, why did
Yeah.
they do that? Like,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, so yeah, we still usually do something like that
Okay.
together, and it has been anime lately, which has been interesting because there's so much good anime, and he's watched so much anime that is,
There really is. Yeah.
so he's picking like his favorite stuff for us to watch. So it's
Okay.
been really interesting to see what he finds interesting,
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
and moving, and because I know he's also um had a hard time picking some of the shows because his mom is a little less um, comfortable with the bad language thing, and not that she's judgmental about it. She's just, it makes her more uncomfortable than it makes me,
Mm-hmm.
um, just personally, right? So I know he's had to think about what he's choosing for us to watch, and that's been good to see him kind of growing and thinking about those kinds of things before stream. Depends what's going on, right? Either there's a project around the house, or there's some cleaning to do, or there's supper to prep, I've been really bad lately about getting any form of exercise. So once our
Mm.
painting is done and our elliptical machine is set back up, I'm planning to, because I feel better, right, when I get some more motion. I mean, I'm on my feet all day at work, but it's different to be on your feet all day at work than it is to, like, because I'm just walking, like I'm not doing any
Yeah.
cardio or anything like that. Um, and yes, my biggest problem is I hate sweat.
Ah, okay.
So I hate feeling sweaty. And so it just, there's other things to do, but the nice thing about the elliptical machine is I can put on a podcast or a YouTube video or
Mm-hmm.
a documentary and take my mind off the fact that I'm sweating, which I hate so
There you
much.
go. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, other than swimming, I think you're maybe out of luck in terms of things that don't make you feel
Well,
sweaty.
yes, and the nearest indoor pool is almost an hour and a half away from
That's
us
out.
here.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Do you have any advice for your younger streamer self?
Um, that's a hard one. I think maybe, well, my earliest streamer self was don't worry about being entertaining.
Mm,
Um, because I don't know. I have it in my head that I'm not naturally entertaining, um, which is not fair to myself. And I don't. When I think deeply about it, I think it's not true. But what I think is that it's not necessarily the kind of entertainment that people are used to,
mm-hmm.
and it's maybe more used to on Twitch than as a traditional form of entertainment, right?
Sure.
Because Twitch is not a traditional form of entertainment in any real sense.
Yeah, true.
Uh, so I think, yeah, maybe just. I mean, I wasn't nervous about whether or not people would show up, but I think I would have been. I think I would have been sad about it if nobody had. So, is that for me?
It's not super cold, but
Well, I'm sweating, so anything cold is.
do you want a cup of ice? Or
No, that's all right, but thank you. Best wife ever,
Yeah. Shout out to
if
the
I do
wife.
say so.
Yeah, we're not gonna fight you on that. Yeah.
We actually, so before we started at the last church we were at, and this is a total aside, we were as part of the sort of the selection process. And we had a passing relationship with the leadership of the church. Like, we had met some of them before and had known them in other contexts, but as part of the process of them deciding whether or not they wanted to hire me for this very specific role, they had both my wife and I do this. I don't want to call it a personality test because that's not what it is. But it was kind of a test designed to assess how you react under pressure, like what your way of operating is. So it's not your personality, because we have different personalities, my wife and I, but we approach problem. It turns out we didn't know until we did this test, but we approach problem solving almost exactly the same way.
Wow.
We are both what you would call fact finders.
Okay.
We want to research before we buy a new whatever, right? Before we buy a
Mm-hmm.
new freezer, like before we buy a new dehumidifier, we want to do some research.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we want to find out. So I jumped into streaming with a little bit less of that than I normally would have. But yeah, so our personalities are different, but the way we approach problem solving is largely the same.
Yeah.
So that is a huge help to us to know that about each other, and I think it's helped us avoid what would have been a lot of friction for other couples,
Yeah.
in some of the disagreements that we've had, to be able to kind of approach it from that perspective. But yeah. I think just to relax and enjoy the ride a little bit more at the beginning would have
Sure.
been helpful for me, just to, because I don't know that I felt pressure to perform, but I felt a bit of a concern that I was wasting my time. And as I grew into it and
Mm.
grew to enjoy it and grew to make it more my own, that faded relatively quickly.
Yeah.
and especially again with Subnautica and the fact that that brought some people in that we were able to have. Like when I finished the game, I probably spent an hour and a half chatting with one of the people there, kind of talking about the universe of Subnautica and what certain things could mean, and just enjoyed kind of diving into the, because one of the nice things about the game is it gives you some structure, but it leaves enough openness kind of for your own interpretation of things, which is fun. It's fun to speculate.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, with that, Twitch chat, thank you for your questions and thank you for being here. I appreciate the various follows and things, and just your engagement with it. We'll go ahead and start to wrap some things up here. Do you have any goals or projects that you're working on?
It's probably something a lot of people end up saying or thinking about, but the possibility of doing a cooking stream in the future.
Cool.
I have had more than a few, because I enjoy cooking.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the things I enjoy most about my job. Like when I'm at work, I am what they call the group home operator. So I'm in charge of the day-to-day operations of the group home. So helping people with personal care tasks, but cooking, doing laundry, meal prep stuff and things like that around the house. And I do enjoy cooking as well. So that seems like, and so I posted some, pictures of food stuff on Twitter at times, and yeah, so that seems like something that some of the people who have watched me for a while would be interested in too.
Well, now that you've done the cookie stream, I feel like you're one step closer, right?
Well, and to some extent, setting that up was sort of a test run. Like, can we make the technology work? I need to set up like a laptop to do the stream monitor, but then broadcast through the desktop here, and so it gave me some ways to sort of figure out how to do some of that. Now more than anything, it's figuring out when and figuring out what would be good to cook, right?
Yeah.
Like, can I do the pre-cooking stream and then set things in the oven while I go do like a gaming stream, and kind of integrate the two, and
the logistics
so we'll see.
of it.
I think that would be fun. I've never had any interest in doing like an IRL kind of or a stream from my phone while I'm out and about. Not really an option in the rural prairies anyway with cell phone service, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's neat that people can do it. And I've enjoyed the occasional time when I've been able to watch that kind of content, but I think it's not for me.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, with that, if anyone out there is not following Pastor Dave, do yourself a favor, go follow him. And here's some other links that you can follow him on.
Find me in all the places.
Find him in all the places.
Or just whatever place is your favorite. I mean,
totally. Yeah. So we've got Twitch, YouTube, and then Twitter on there. So pick your poison.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Perfect. Okay. Well, with that, we're going to end with a little tradition. It's a 10-question questionnaire. I know you've watched the podcast. You know what's coming.
I can't remember half of them, so
perfect. Good.
I'm sure it'll come to me when
that makes it better, honestly. So these are 10 final questions inspired by James Lipton, Bernard Pivot, and CJ the X. Pastor Dave Plays. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. Which game or activity do you love to stream the most?
It's always been a toss-up for me. I love World of Warcraft, the classic version of it. I have streamed retail on occasion here and there, like the Dragonflight launch. I streamed for a while. Retail WoW just isn't for me anymore.
Yeah.
There's a variety of reasons for that. I've talked about it on my channel before, so I won't go into great detail. But classic is comfort food. Season of Discovery has been a nice twist on that. It's like your favorite recipe but with a different side dish. So I still am really loving and enjoying that. But the other side of the streaming coin for me has been for the last like year and a half, The Long Dark, which is a totally different game, sort of a very realistic winter survival type of story, and there's so much to explore. The game is so beautiful. The lore is relatively light. I mean, there is a story campaign you can do. The 5th chapter we're still all eagerly waiting for in the Long Dark community. but so much like outside of World of Warcraft, the nicest streamers I've ever met have been the Long Dark streamers. Super supportive. It's not a huge community, but the people that do it are passionate about it. The game has been out for a long time, and the game itself has grown so much since, I think, was it 2013 when the first
Oh, wow.
like when it came out in. Yeah, and so there's I don't know, 24 regions or something in the game. It launched with like 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And so many systems just continue to be built and add to the game, and I think they're finally coming to the point where they're wrapping it up. But it's a very, like, World of Warcraft is a little bit intense, right? There's combat, there's, you know, all that kind of stuff, and I mean, there's combat in the Long Dark, which is mostly you getting destroyed by wildlife, but it's more strategic, it feels like. And it's for a game that can be as intense as it is at times, it's oddly relaxing. And it feels like going out for a walk. Like I grew up in a place that didn't get a lot of snow, and now I live in a place where there's arguably too much snow, too much of the year. But in the summertime, being able to go for a walk in the game, where the game it's -40, is a breath of fresh air. And ironically, in the wintertime, being able to go out for a walk in the freezing cold in the game, where I'm still warm in the house, is also kind of nice.
Love
But
it.
yeah, there are other games, and there are other games I would, in a sense, have liked to have played on stream. I'm actually a big fan of JRPG games.
Okay.
I've fallen in love with, having only ever played one game of it, I've fallen in love with the Persona franchise.
Yeah, yeah.
And on one hand, I would like to play that game on stream because I would like to experience it with other people, but for the fact that there's the family friendly thing, which a good portion of it is not, which doesn't bother me personally, but is not part of what I want sort of on the internet with my content. The other thing is that a game like that's a story thing, I feel like I wouldn't be able to play it offline.
Yep.
And for a game that takes like 120 hours to play, with my, you know, 4 to 5 hour stream window, sometimes only twice a week, like it would take a year and a half to stream one of those games, and I think everybody would probably lose interest, possibly including me, over that span.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fair.
it's probably going to take me twice as long to play them, you know, off stream, because so much of my game time is stream time.
Yeah. Which game or activity do you hate to stream the most?
If I hated to stream it, I wouldn't stream it. And again, because it's a hobby, because it's something I do purely for fun, I can load up any game I want and play any. I don't tend to. Well, that's not true. I tend to play those 2 games, right, that I mentioned before. When I'm playing World of Warcraft, I'm in World of Warcraft. I almost never do something else while my subscription is active, but I only tend to subscribe for 30 days at a time. I pay for my sub time out of my leftover retail WoW gold, and so I use it somewhat sparingly and somewhat strategically, because it is a finite resource that just because I'm not playing, I can't really replenish.
Yeah.
Not that I couldn't afford the money to spend on the game. If I have the gold, I'd rather do it that way. But yeah, I think I would hate having to try and do an IRL, or even like a just chatting. I had a hard time figuring out what category to put my Christmas celebration stream into, because it didn't feel like just chatting with the other stuff we were doing, but that was kind of the closest,
Yeah.
you know, to the options I had. And yeah, other than that, I would just stick to what I said. If I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Music. And I don't have like even 1 or 2 music styles that I enjoy or that speak to me. I do enjoy a pretty broad range of music options. Mostly I listen to soundtracks, mostly video game soundtracks, because there's a lot of great music in there. There's been a lot of I think people who are not part of the sort of Christian religious sphere don't realize how much Christian and religious music there is out there.
Mm-hmm.
Partly because it's relatively cost effective to produce, right? Like there isn't a whole lot of super Christian television shows, some movies, but music is very prevalent. I don't listen to that nearly so much as I used to now that I'm not pastoring and involved in like worship stuff in the church setting. Um, it still speaks to me. It still moves me. But I tend to find more creative excitement in other things.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because it kind of it's different. Like
Yeah.
I have just enough like musical training and musical experience that I can recognize really neat things when somebody does them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like in the Subnautica soundtrack, the way they work with rhythm and set things to be like to create tension,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the game is a very tense kind of game. So to create that with music that's, you know, kind of background music and to kind of almost set your teeth on edge, but do it in a way that's not super jarring,
Yeah.
that it kind of sucks you in and you don't notice it in the background. I find that stuff like that really impressive and really, really neat to kind of just have on in the background and sets me thinking about different things.
Yeah. Yeah. What turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Uh, people who are angry.
Mm.
Uh, so that includes things like music that's angry, right? Like, I mean, I ironically do enjoy like some heavier, like almost like heavy metal or, you know, rock alternative kind of stuff. Again, that's partly what I grew up to. I grew up listening to like Soundgarden and the Cranberries and and stuff like that that was a little less along the lines of what I sort of seek out now.
Hmm.
But yeah, just and things like things like anger and tension. I when that kind of thing is and I had some of that to deal with growing up too. Like my parents had, you know, some rough patches and some they were separated for a time and some arguments and my dad was kind of loud when he got upset. He was loud,
Hmm.
um, and so I woke up a couple of times as a kid, you know, to my dad yelling. Right, like
Yeah.
it was how they worked things out, and it wasn't, you know, healthy necessarily, but like everybody else, they were doing the best they could. I'm sure there's some trauma there that, that I could process my way through, but that stops me being creative and you know sort of puts me in, I don't want to say survival mode, but in I have to guard myself against not spiraling in um like you get like I was saying earlier too about like my thought process is kind of having conversations in my head,
Yeah.
right? Explaining
Yeah.
myself in my head to questions that haven't even been asked.
Yeah.
Which can be which can be a fun exercise. Like it's not always bad, but I have to be careful that in those things or when I get stressed or when I have something negative that does go on, that I have to work to not start that in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just because then I don't have the mental capacity to be creative. It just shuts off that, and I get in this other um this other, I guess the appropriate thing to call it is coping,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
um but not that I feel overly burdened by it. I just am conscious about the fact that that's what I need to do to stay healthy.
Sure. Yeah. Which streamer would you like to meet most in real life?
I remembered that question and I have no
Is
idea.
that a hard one? Yeah.
Not because I don't think the streamers that like it'd have to be somebody I follow, but probably actually Periton
Okay.
would be and his fiance. Um, I think that of all the people that I have met through Twitch, I think they would be the ones that would be most like my wife and I in real life. Like again, because we both share that kind of family friendly
Mm-hmm.
way of doing things. Um, not that I would have a problem, you know, getting together with other people in other settings. I think it would just be a little bit more uncomfortable for maybe for them more than me,
Mm-hmm.
maybe for me more than them. Who's to say? Um, yeah, I don't know that it will ever happen,
Yeah. But
but it
no, it's
doesn't
a
have
great
to, right?
answer.
That's not the question. So,
Yeah. What is something you would like to try on stream but never have?
um, I mean, I think the cooking thing is in there,
Mm-hmm.
again, because I do enjoy it, and I don't know. I think a lot of people are intimidated by cooking, and I wonder sometimes if that isn't why cooking streams appeal to people.
Hmm.
Um, my wife lived with my parents for a span of time while I was still in school, um, and learned a little bit about cooking from my mom, which is interesting in itself. But there was, for the longest time, my wife would not make anything in a cookbook that didn't have a picture of
Hmm.
what it was supposed to look like. Right? Forget whether or not it tasted good. She just wanted to know what
That
it was supposed to look
presentation.
like when it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like, am I doing this right? And so much the better if it. This was before a million uh, cooking or recipe websites, right? That now there is that for anybody that wants it. But
Mm-hmm.
um, just to share some of what I've learned about it and why I enjoy it as I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I worry that it would be too much. Like, I worry even just streaming that it's too much for me to keep my mind on conversation that's happening in chat and what I'm doing on stream and my own internal monologue and train of thought. And cooking, I think, would add another layer of it. So I'd
Sure.
be doing more with my hands. But
Yeah. You'll never know if you don't try it.
I know one of these days,
One of these days. What's something you would never want to do on stream?
sing. And
Hmm.
I have
Interesting.
very briefly for 5-second snippets or whatever, because you asked about what sparks me creatively, and that can often be music. And so uh music and song lyrics can get stuck in my head very easily,
Mm-hmm.
or like two words that someone types in chat will spark a song in my head that
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard in 5 or 10 years. And so then my brain just goes there, and sometimes the only good way to get it to stop is to let it out.
Yeah.
But I am not a singer.
Okay.
Uh, there was a span of time at one of the churches I served where nobody else wanted to lead worship, and so they were stuck with me,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody wanted to not do it so badly that they were okay with me doing it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's not the best it could be.
Okay. Why do you go live?
So many reasons, so many reasons. It is a recreational activity for me. It is um, despite the occasional frustration, the occasional complication. It is relaxing for me at the end of the day. Like, I don't want to log off, right? When
Mm-hmm.
it's time to go, I don't want to say goodbye
Yeah.
to the people that I'm hanging out with.
Mm-hmm. Follow-up
And
question. Oh, no,
yes,
continue. I was just going to
I
say, why do you
I don't know.
really
Like I
go
said,
live?
yeah. uh, I think because I enjoy being out there and exposed to when you watch streams, you get to decide what you watch,
Mm-hmm.
right? When I stream, I get to decide what I play, but I don't get to decide what other people think about it.
Mm.
And so to put myself out there and to be exposed to different perspectives, to different thoughts on games, there's lots of great streamers out there that have lots of insight into how games are made, and I enjoy that kind of inside look at things. But when I stream, I feel a connection to a world beyond my little corner of my little
Yeah.
province and community and area, because I grew up in Surrey. It's 400,000 people. I live in a town of about 400 right now.
Wow.
Like, the nearest Walmart is a 90-minute drive.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a feeling of being isolated that I didn't realize I was experiencing until I started streaming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's not why I started, but I think that's one of the reasons I keep going.
Yeah, totally. All right, final question.
Okay.
You're on your deathbed. You know exactly how much time you have left. You have any and all resources available to you. Viewer count doesn't matter. Commercial viability doesn't matter. None of that matters. What do you do for your final stream on Earth?
I thought about that question because I
Yeah.
heard it a few times now. Um, and I've said before that I never started my channel to want to preach, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure anybody that's watched for more than a single stream pretty much gets that that's not why I do what I do. I might have to make an exception for my final stream, but I would like to make I would actually almost like to do a series of messages, like 4 or 5 messages, like Sunday style messages, but built for gamers, built for Twitch, right? That take different things from different games, because there's, like, when you start talking about stories, there's so many parallels.
Yeah.
Between stories, between Bible stories and other stories that are out there, parallels, insights, things that help put something in perspective that might not otherwise make sense to a modern audience trying to read and understand the Bible, especially a modern audience that largely doesn't have the Christian background that you or I would have to put some things in context.
Sure.
And I would like that to be something that I leave behind.
Yeah. Pastor Dave, such a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate your time and just your perspective. Like, this has been really lovely, truly, to like get to know you more. I really appreciate it.
Well, I've enjoyed myself too.
Yay.
I appreciate the opportunity to come on. I remember when you first started, and you kind of put the call out to, like, anybody who wants to be on the podcast, hit me up. And I was like, not that the hesitation was not anything to do with who you are or what your channel is or what I expected of you. It was just, do I want to put myself out there like that?
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you asked me, and I don't know if anybody's suggested me or not, but I appreciate just the content that I've seen and the kind of the chats that we've had, sort of via streaming, have been so positive, and this has been more of the same. So Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I'm so glad I asked you. With that, I would love to raid somebody that if there's someone online that you'd like to pass the love to.
Oh man.
And while he's looking, dear Twitch chat, here is a little raid message that we'll spam to let them know that Pastor Dave sent us. So you can copy and paste that.
Yes, the one time you raided me got pinged by our auto mall for caps.
It's kind of funny though to like raid someone's channel and it's like message deleted. Like,
I didn't even know what was going on.
So funny.
Oh man, so many choices.
Yeah.
My list of streams has just grown over the last year. Let's I can be indecisive at times. Can you tell?
It's okay. I put you on the spot.
Let's raid Jettison.
Cool. Can you spell that for me?
Yes. JEDISON.
Perfect.
He's a semi-regular in my channel, and
oh, beautiful.
Playing Enshrouded right now. So
love that.
Which I think kind of got overshadowed by Pal World.
Okay.
But yeah, neat fella, and yeah, I hope you guys have fun. And I'm gonna have to get his stream going on in the background here too, so we can
all say hi together.
That's right. Yes, there we go.
Well, thank you again, and thank you to everybody in Twitch chat hanging out. Thanks for the follows from Pastor Dave's friends. I really appreciate all of you. If you like this sort of thing, we do Why We Go Live every other Sunday-ish here. And you can follow Why We Go Live on Twitter, Instagram, all that jazz for more information. And again, if you're not following Pastor Dave, do it. Go follow him on all the things.
And there's a sizable backlog of amazing interviews from the past that you guys should also check out.
True. You can go watch those on YouTube or here on Twitch. All right, let's go say hi to Jettison. Let him know that Pastor Dave sent us. All right, bye everybody. Goodbye. This is the most awkward part always, Pastor Dave.
Bye.
Goodbye.